And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Alien Spaceship stream. You could be watching from anywhere around the country or the world, and I really appreciate every single one of you coming to you from the Spaceship Studios from a galaxy far, far away. Alright, so this is a little bit of a later stream than what we usually do, but here we are. We have some interesting trial drama going on today that I'll be talking about. And hello, Becky. It's great to see you. Well, welcome to the stream. Okay, and let's go here, and y'all can see me this way. Alright. Hello, everybody. It is I, Alien Spaceship. I hope everybody's having a good day, good evening. We are now here. Alright. Alright, Becky, so it is great to see you as always. And there was, so today we had, oh, hello, Dwayne. Good evening to you, Dwayne, and where I am it's evening, Becky, so good evening to you. And have a great live Alien Spaceship. Sharon says hello. Oh, hello to Sharon, and thank you, Dwayne, for stopping by and hitting the like button. I always appreciate y'all's support. And yeah, so I was talking about the verdict today, which there was no verdict, but the situation with that trial at the family murder trial. So Spectre, I called him Spencer, but he's Spectre, was on verdict watch today, and I saw the closings. And earlier, and then I came into chat and a little bit, like right when it was about, one of the parts was about to end when they're going to have the not jury selection, but when they're about to go start deliberations. The judge is very nice. I think we've seen him on a trial or two before. He was a nice judge, and he was conducting, giving them the jury instructions, and then what happens next is quite interesting. So, with that trial, they deliberated for a few hours, and they couldn't come to a decision, which is very odd. It was a bit too early, and during the time in chat, I was watching a couple different streams at once, which was like two, and I had a couple of different windows open so I could see the different chat windows when I switch around. And, and I could tell people that are on the mobile phone because the YouTube app doesn't really let you, like, watch multiple trials at once. So, I always did this for years with kind of telling people what was going on in different trials. So, I was doing that, and I do it for my own self, so I like watching both. So, we were in chat having a good time joking, and Rome Behedra was very entertaining with the chat today. Did very well. And talking about food, talking about jokes, and making jokes about the trial, stuff like that. And yeah, I do feel that they came back too early the first time to try to get people to see the verdict was hung, right? So, and Rumbahedro predicted that it would be a hung jury, and because they were taking so long, and the way he was watching it unfold, and then his guess was correct. They completely came back as hung jury. Then they wanted them to go back to deliberate to try to make a decision. It was 6-6, so it seemed split. Now, the laws in Mississippi are a little bit different, where they can't have people. The Allen charges are not in Mississippi because of certain reasons. If something happened, I will kind of go into why that is a thing. It was about 3 hours the first time. It was 2 or 3 hours, something like that. It was not long. Then they sent them back for an hour or more, something of that nature. And then they came back as no decision made, a hung jury. And the judge said, do y'all want to go back and try a little bit more? And he was like, okay, we'll go home. See y'all later. And it's like people were very triggered, and I was triggered. And I'm not saying the judge was in the wrong, because the laws of Mississippi don't allow him to do what other judges probably could do. In my opinion, like, he can't do the Allen charges. I don't really know 100% for certain if what he could have done, because the laws in every state is different. But I know I've seen judges that will. There's one judge who was like, people want to go home, and he said it was around this time, like where I am, 7:47 p.m. I remember it was like around this time a couple of months ago or last year that dude was like, "Nah, y'all gonna go back and uh, get a verdict." So sometimes judges will have them work until they get a decision. Oh, hello, Lori. Good evening. Great to see you. So, yeah, and Lori, we were talking about a trial today. Remember yesterday I was showing you Caroline, the teacher. The Today we had and those that are coming in was verdict watch for that trial. They did their closings and they did verdict watch, and it was a very disappointing day because there was no verdict reached. It was a hung jury, and they did not deliberate for that long. Okay, and the first time they were deadlocked. They was 6-6. They didn't have a verdict. So the judge encouraged them to go back, and there's no Allen charges. With Allen charges, they could have them go back. It's like a dynamite. Also, it's called a dynamite, where they can get them to get a verdict. Now, these people were deliberating for, I'd say, another hour or two or three. I can see how long the stream was. I could kind of calculate it for you. But yes, it was about 2 hours first time, 2 or 3 hours, and about an hour or so with the other part, and they couldn't come to a decision. Now, juries have worked until this time right now. Juries have gone through the night and have gone a couple of days. Some juries have gone a week or two until they come to a decision. Because, like, say if we're like a jury and we can't figure out or come to a decision on something, we, would try to reason it out to get a verdict in. It was extremely unfortunate where this, we believe the person did it. A lot of us believe the person did it, but there was not a lot of evidence to convict him in the court of law. Like, somebody can be guilty, and in the court of law, there isn't the enough evidence to convict somebody. And we have that in place where, different checks and balances. But at the same time, yeah, we believe the person did it, but there was no verdict in this case. They couldn't come to a decision. And the jury just went home. And they were not deliberating for that long at all. And people were very upset. And I was triggered myself because, we were accusing them of possibly being a lazy jury, but we don't really know what kept them in a deadlock like that. But I've seen different, of course, being a juror is very stressful, and deliberating for hours and hours and hours is something I don't think sounds like the funnest activity. But of course, I'm in the trial stuff, so it's a little bit different. But people, I could say, would not always want to be in a jury, so that would make sense. But the other situation, right, in the other situation with the trial, I think that it was... Oh, hello, Michael. Good evening. I think, as I said, it was disappointing that there was no verdict, and they went home, and they're going to retry him. So there is this other trial that may come up to try to convict him, or they'll let him go. Now, the other day, today, another tragic thing occurred without any spoilers, really. But it was the mother of the victim was extremely upset about what happened. And they showed it, and eventually they had to cut it out. They had to cut it off. But she was very upset about the way the jury handled the situation when she was... And they may have had an exchange between each other. And then she was extremely upset about what occurred. Yeah, so that trial, it was a hung jury. And we'll see if they try him again or he gets off the hook at some point. It's as I said, in my opinion, the jury could have debated longer, but they didn't. And they completely were, I think, acted inappropriately, but I don't know what could have caused that to happen. So, speaking of juries, it's the most important part of a trial because in a trial you have people who, you have to have a good jury so people can produce the right outcome in the trial. So, for instance, hello Anna, good evening to you. Welcome to the stream. And as I said, Anna, we will be looking at it today, the reactions to the two different trials tonight, I should say, and because there was I don't know if you heard, there's a situation with the jury today when they're deliberating and they couldn't come to a decision. So that is what happened. So a jury is extremely important to have. Because if you don't have the right type of jury, you're going to have a situation like this possibly occur. Like we were making jokes that they want to go to a game or they want to go home. And if you don't have a jury that is a proper jury, you're going to have a problem, possibly. So, yeah, and there's no Allen charges in Mississippi, and resulting in the judge may not be able to force them to go on longer. And I was telling Kimberly today, someone I met in the chat, that it depends, in my opinion, on the judge and the laws and of the place, of the state, and it also depends on the judge. Michael says, one of the disappointments with the verdict was from the judge. What was the verdict on the theft charge? At least we could have gotten a partial verdict, but never asked the jury. Okay, so you believe that the judge acted inappropriately in that. Okay. Because I do always say that, a shout out to Moki, welcome. A lot of times, Michael, it is the judge's decision. He runs the show. And I feel if he could have had them debate longer and not been too easy with it, but I don't know what laws are restricting him. But that was a question he could have asked him. He could have seemed a little bit it's not jolly, but kind of like up in the air. But we have to come down on earth and figure out something. Yeah, very good one, Michael. Very good position to bring up. Yeah, there was another time he was charged with stealing a deer. And he was arrested for that. And everyone in chat thought it was hysterical, but it's true. It really did happen. All right. Now, we'll be reacting. Also, the River murder trial. They had some hilarious scenes today where they had... from the Johnny Depp trial, we have the crooked Deke. And then from Diddy, there was Free Deke. And in the River trial, there is Dodging Deke. Is going to be dodging Deke in prison. So today in the River trial was quite interesting. Now, I will also say that, like what I said before, that there wasn't really any evidence. I mean, not any evidence, but there was not a strong amount of evidence possibly to convict him in the court of law, although a lot of people believe that he did it. Moki said, they don't have enough evidence on this guy. I think he's a total dirtbag and could have done it, but they don't have enough evidence. I agree, definitely. Because in a court of law, even like what G said, for instance, like when people talk about very controversial trials that we've looked at, is that in a court, you could look at something a certain way and somebody is innocent, but it doesn't mean they were really innocent. So it depends in the court of law and the art of speech, how it's done. So the way it was conducted, he could have done it, but there was enough evidence. I do agree that it didn't seem like enough evidence was there, although he may have done it. And another fact, Aaron, good evening to you, welcome. Another situation in the trial was the family, what Anna said, that the daughters likely, in my opinion, had to have done it, but I say all three were involved together. They could have been involved as a family, that's true too. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so it could be a couple of different theories. Oh, hello, Tom. Good evening. The cross of that last witness in the River trial was hilarious. Yeah. And we'll be looking at that, too. And, all right, let's get into it. Let's switch over to the other window. I'm scared. All right. All right, I'm back. I'm back. All right, I turned the sound on, everybody. I was being Temu. I didn't have the sound on. Thank you. All right, let's react to this verdict situation and this trial right here. Let's go. Yeah. Utah was just a case open public profile trial back in October and can appear in as three public defendants. All right, so this is about the deadly family plot murder trial, and there's some scenes in here that are a little bit, upsetting. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Moki. Okay, let's go here.
I believe that's all of you. All right, I've received another note from the jury indicating that y'all have still not been able to reach a unanimous decision. I caution you again, don't tell me which side, for lack of better words, winning. But what's the score? Has the score changed any?
No.
Score has not changed any? Do you feel that, and I'm sort of directing this to all the jurors, not just Mr. Williams, but do you think that further deliberations, do you think any chance of any further deliberations moving the needle anywhere? Any y'all think, do you think further deliberations will be any of use or not? Don't be bashful. Speak out, shake your head, whatever you think anyway. I see some of you shaking your head no. I see a lot of you shaking your head no. All right. Y'all just bear with me one just a second. Well, I'm gonna let y'all go. I'm not gonna send you back if the needle hadn't moved any and you don't think there's any chance of it. If it was a 10-2 vote, 11-1, 9-3, even maybe it's a 6-6 as far as you can get anyway. And I want to say I appreciate y'all's service. We all knew going in this was going to be a tough case. It's going to take some of your time, and it's going to be a difficult case. I appreciate your service. Y'all be free to go. If you need an excuse for work or anything, y'all stop down in Miss Nowicki's office and they'll give you an excuse. If you want to talk to anyone about your jury service, you're free to do so. If you don't want to talk to anyone about your jury service, tell them you don't want to talk about it. I don't have any reason to think they would persist in asking questions, but if they do, you get in touch with me or one of these court officials, and we will put a stop to it, okay? I don't have any reason to expect anyway to have any repercussions for your jury service whatsoever. But thank you. If you need that work excuse or anything, stop off in Miss Nowicki's office, and y'all go. Thank you for your service, and y'all have a good evening, okay?
All right, yeah, that is when the judge dismissed them for the evening. They were finished. It was a mistrial, and Alexandria was saying Alexandria is the mod of Law and Crime. She said that he's going to be retried, allegedly. I don't know if that will happen or not, but
Feel it has any choice?
We'll see if they recharge him or not.
Declared mistrial. Y'all consult your calendars about when you may want to, if and then you want to retry this case. I got my wagon loaded between now and the first of the year, but sometime after the first of the year, if y'all wish to have a retrial, I'll get with you and get on calendars anyway.
Yeah, the Kip County term is in February, and I believe that Hawkeye has their term at the same time. So they have to do a session set.
We've burned through one Temple County term by this case. I don't know if we can sacrifice another term. It probably needs to be outside the normal Temple County term anyway. That's just my thoughts anyway. We've got y'all get together and look at your calendars and see this case I want to get disposed of. I'll move something on my calendar if I need to make time for this case.
Can we schedule a time in the next week or so for the sale?
I'll be in Lafayette County. I'll be in Lafayette County week after next. No, next. I'll be in Lafayette County starting Monday all week. Mr. Hill will be there. I'm sure somebody at the DA's office will be there. If y'all need me next week, I'll be there all week. Okay.
We'll plan to set it.
Okay.
Plan to set it at a future date at that time.
Yeah, we'll see about a future date at that time. At this time, Mr. Spence will remain in custody. Good evening. At this time, and I'll hear any motions. I trust no one had any court instructions, discussions about the matters that have been introduced in the evidence, specifically the things of value. We'll entertain those thoughts. We can do that off the record after we have excused the jury, but we need to decide how we're going to do those things. Okay. All right. Unless there's anything else, court be in recess. Okay.
All right, this is when the jury was in recess. They were finished for and for the first time they came back about 2 hours later, and there was no verdict. And they just hung jury. In my opinion, I thought that they could have gone on longer. But Moki was explaining her opinion about it, where she said, I think the judge knew 6-6 was a bad split, and the state doesn't have enough, so keep it going would be a waste. So that is an explanation why they didn't keep them, but usually I've seen it go on for much longer. Oh, I'm about to show the mom. I'm about to show it. Okay. I'm going to go down this way. Let's see. All right. This is the very heartbreaking scene with the mother. Pretty effed up that this obvious 3 people did it, but no one held accountable. I agree. Yeah, definitely, Aaron. Yeah. It's just that the evidence wasn't there. Or enough evidence. That doesn't mean someone's innocent, though, Aaron. They're just very good how they did it, if they did do it. So yeah, I do agree with you, Aaron. Yeah. We all want justice, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. But in the end, there is justice in the end. But sometimes not always at the moment. Yeah, that's the mother. This was a very... And it's possible that they exchange a reaction between her and the defendant exchange a reaction. You see how she darts her head. They may have had an exchange with each other. And that's the mother of the victim. Yeah, and they were comforting her. Trigger warning, viewer discretion is advised. Alright, viewer discretion is advised. Eventually they play the audio. Tasman, something like that, yeah. And good to see you, Tasman. Aaron, I want to protect you from this video, my sensitive millennial flower. Yeah, this is very heartbreaking. Now, they play the sound. For your discretion is advised, everybody. All right, here we go. Yeah, and Moki said it right. It's like it's important to know that this is why it's important to not take someone's life, right? To show the the heartbreak of a situation, and it was. I remember I was watching it as it was live, and they unexpectedly undid the audio and showed her wailing. And I was at one of the other channels too. I was watching two channels at once, and I was like telling them another chat room. I was saying, y'all, hugs in advance, a group hug in advance. It was gonna get ugly. It was gonna get really messed up because that was very heartbreaking for the mother to to see her wailing and moaning, and also she fainted. She passed out. Hopefully, God bless her that she's okay. And it was a very upsetting situation. And as I said, I want to also share it with all of you. Although most of y'all have seen this, it's because just to show like that these types of behavior really hurts other people, even those that cannot feel empathy, and that justice is important. And I will add, although people may disagree, that it's important for juries to work very, very, very tediously to get a verdict and not just go home and watch a football game. But I understand it was not enough evidence. I understand that 6-6 was not a good split. But yeah, that just shows y'all the tragic. Autumn, this was the deadly family plot murder trial. It was a hung jury. This was a hung jury. And with those that may have been listening, I will say that in this hung jury, the judge was telling them that they did their duty and they went home. They did not have the Allen charges to, the Allen charges would have the jury go longer and go longer. Yeah, so this is just the show for educational reasons and how the murder of other people causes heartbreak to families, and why it's good for juries and judges and everybody to work as hard as possible to get justice or to get some resolve and do what they must do. And Michael said more specifically Jeffrey Spence. Yeah, yes, awful. Yes, indeed. Now, Loki said, I don't even want to hurt someone's feelings, let alone physically hurt someone. Yeah. Yeah. Aaron said, because I missed 9% of this trial, is it understandable of the results? Prosecution bring enough. Now, it is, Aaron, it is, according to my observation in the chat, and chat can make commentary about this, there was not enough evidence to convict him. And what Moki also mentioned earlier is that a 6-by-6 split is not really the best split, and the prosecution did not have enough to convict him. So this was a possible outcome. And this is what happened. Just like a tornado or something that occurs, there's certain elements that have to come together. It doesn't mean he didn't do it, or they all did it together. They all could have done it together. It doesn't mean that they're innocent. There just was not in the court of law to convict. With enough evidence to bring. Now, some people believe the prosecution was sloppy, or that they didn't really do a good job presenting evidence, and I do think that his attorney did not well against Caroline, but she did well in general. Aaron, that is possible that they may drop the case. At some point, they're going to drop it at some point, in my opinion, if they can't get him convicted, because how many times are you going to try to charge him over and over again? And Moki was mentioning they have to get new evidence, in her opinion, to try to convict him again, to try to charge him again. Now, the other thing is, yeah, burden of proof. Very, very good, Lori. Very good. Burden of proof is needed. You have to have that there present to convict. And they will are according to Alexandria, the mod of Law and Crime. She was mentioning that they're going to have a new trial. There will be a new trial at some point for him, allegedly. But we'll see what happens in the time from here to then. And sometimes there's just a deadlock. And there's no Allen charges in that state. Right now, Kirby's mom has to sit through another trial. Oh, in my opinion, the Baby River trial is strong. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, we are going to be reacting to some funny scenes from the baby murder trial, which, of course, that sentence doesn't really sound good, the way I said that, but it makes sense if you really look at the context, because they had a witness. The last witness was hilarious. He was like Dr. Siegel, but like a real tired version of him. Oh, I didn't know that, Michael. I thought there was no Allen charges there. Okay. It's just not called an Allen charge. Okay. Okay, I thought that they were saying earlier there was nothing there that was like an Allen charge. Okay, thank you. Alright, so here we go. Shout out to Mary Toodles. Alright. Alright. Michael can explain it in chat, and I'll briefly explain what an Allen charge is. An Allen charge is a supplemental jury instruction that a judge gives to a deadlocked jury to encourage them to reach a unanimous verdict. This instruction encourages jurors to reconsider their positions in an effort to avoid mistrial. The term comes from 1896 Supreme Court case Allen versus United States, when upheld the use of such instructions in the federal court. That is an explanation of what that is. Okay, Lori. Yeah, this is not going to be anything graphic. It's not going to be... and if you do whatever you feel is best. But yeah, it's funny. It's like this witness. It was funny about the fights that were happening and the questions are being asked. So this shouldn't bother you, in my opinion. But you do whatever you feel is best for you. But yeah, this is just something like it was a funny witness. All right, and there's nothing graphic or sick or anything that are in these videos. By the way, all right. But here we go.
Massey for a judgment of acquittal when viewing the information that we've received, the evidence, in a light most favorable to the state. Does the defense wish to put on any proof?
Please, may I ask you, I may have missed it because we came in, we're speaking to Mr. Isbell in the back, but did you address also the especially aggravated kidnapping?
I addressed, no.
What we have.
I did not, I think I stopped at, you're not wrong, especially aggravated kidnapping. I'm ready to get into it. You want to hear it?
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to baby Kennedy Hoyle, and I know you hate that, as it relates to Kennedy Hoyle, the less than 48-hour-old infant, he had no question.
All right, let's get to the part. Here we go, right here.
Explain one more time what cognitive psychology is and why it's a science.
Cognitive psychology is the study of things going on in the brain: memory, judgment, decision making, perception, sensation, problem solving. And it's a science because we use the scientific method in order to find causal effects.
How old is it as a science?
I think the first research that was done on it was probably done in the late 1800s, but I think it became a formal science in the 1960s when a book was written called Cognitive Psychology.
How does cognitive psychology relate to interrogations and confessions?
At some point during an interrogation, the person has to make a decision, judgment decision, or decide what they're going to do. Are they going to confess? Are they going to stick to their denials?
About this witness, he looks extremely exhausted, and we're all making like remarks. Wait, what is up with his hair? All right, let's play it from the first part right here, and we can get the whole thing. All right.
REYNEUSCHATC.
Mr. Nushat, what's your occupation?
I'm a professor. I'm a core faculty member at Fielding Graduate University.
Okay. And what is your educational background?
I got my bachelor's degree at Roger Williams College. I then got my master's degree at Cortland College, which is part of the SUNY system, State University of New York, in general experimental psychology. And then I got my PhD in cognitive psychology from Binghamton University, which is also part of the SUNY system.
Okay. And do you have any particular specialty within psychology?
I'm a cognitive psychologist.
Okay. And what does that mean?
Cognitive psychology is the study of all brain processes, pretty much. Problem solving, judgment, decision making, memory, language, perception, sensation.
And after school, did you proceed to work in that field?
I did.
Okay. What is your work history?
I worked 1 year at St. Mary's College of Maryland as a visiting professor. Then I moved on to the University of Alabama in Huntsville, not home of the football team, one of the schools related to it. And then I just this December, I moved on to Fielding Graduate University.
Okay. And have you conducted any research or have you taught in this particular field?
I have.
And how long have you followed research in this field?
I've been doing research in this field for 30 years, 35 years maybe. Since I got my master's degree, I've been following confession since about 2007 when I started doing the research on it, which is about 18 years.
Okay. Have you also been teaching in this field?
I have.
Okay. And what do you teach?
I teach all the experimental classes. This semester I'm teaching research methods and forensic psychology, but I've taught all introductory psychology, sensation, perception, cognition, psychology and law, most of the experimental classes.
Okay. And what do you do to follow the research?
I follow the research in 2 ways. I read the literature, or 3 ways. I conduct research, and I follow the DNA exonerations.
Okay. Have you contributed to scholarship regarding this?
I have.
In what way?
I've published articles, written chapters.
Are you currently engaged in research in the field of false confessions?
I am.
Okay. And do you research that separate and independent of this litigation?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, if I may pass forward the document. Do you recognize that?
Give me some of the cheaters. This is my curriculum vitae, CV.
Your Honor, I'd ask that that be made the next numbered exhibit, number 194. Mr. Nushat, how many papers approximately have you written in this topic?
Including books and chapters,
Yes.
about 70, I would say.
And do all of those or most of those involve the topic of confessions?
No, I've done a lot of research on eyewitness identification as well. I would say 25 probably on the area of confessions.
And the writings that you have done regarding false confessions, have those been peer reviewed?
Some of them have been, yes.
Okay. And what does that mean to be peer reviewed?
So in my field, the gold standard is having journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. So what you do is once I conduct an experiment and write it up, I send it out to a journal, and the journal sends it out to people in the field like me who do the same research. So they evaluate the research and make a recommendation if it should be accepted for publication, revised, or rejected, and then the editor will make a decision. And it's peer reviewed because they're my peers. They're the people that I would see at conferences who do the same research that I do.
And have your publications been accepted to actually be published in the periodicals?
Yes,
Have you presented at any conferences?
I have.
Okay. How many times?
I couldn't count at this point. I've presented nationally, regionally, and internationally in conferences.
Have you previously been accepted by courts as an expert to testify in legal proceedings?
I have
Approximately how many times?
over 100.
And is that in the area of false confessions or false confessions and eyewitness identification?
Mostly in eyewitness identification. I just recently started doing the false confession, but most of those are in eyewitness identification, but some are in confessions.
Okay. Have you specifically been accepted as an expert in false confession cases?
I have.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to qualify Mr. Jeffrey Neuschatz as an expert in confessions.
No objection,
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Neuschatz, explain one more time what cognitive psychology is and why it's a science.
Cognitive psychology is the study of things going on in the brain: memory, judgment, decision-making, perception, sensation, problem-solving. And it's a science because we use the scientific method in order to find causal effects.
How old is it as a science?
I think the first research that was done on it was probably done in the late 1800s, but I think it became a formal science in the 1960s when a book was written called Cognitive Psychology.
How does cognitive psychology relate to interrogations and confessions?
At some point during an interrogation, the person has to make a decision, judgment decision, or decide what they're going to do. Are they going to confess? Are they going to stick to their denials of what they're going to do? That's a cognitive process.
And is the research in this field generally accepted within the scientific community?
It is.
And how do people within your field of the study the issue of interrogations and confessions?
They study in three ways. They look at actual confessions, actual interrogations. They look at the DNA exonerations where people falsely confessed and were convicted, and then they conduct research.
Are there any particularly influential sources relating to interrogations and confessions for you?
For me, there are three. The first one is the scientific review paper, which was written by Casson and colleagues. And basically what a scientific review paper is, it's a review of all the research in the field. And then they give recommendations of how best to apply those to whatever issue it is, in this case, confession. There's the Drizzen and Leo law review paper, which outlines the factors that are involved in false confession cases. It's probably the most comprehensive look at false confessions. That's D-R-I-Z-I-N, Drizzen. And then the other one is the book that was written by Richard Leo on interrogations.
Okay. How does this research match what regular lay people believe about confessions?
It indicates that there are two myths that people have about confessions. The two big myths are that no one would confess if they didn't commit the crime. They would only confess if they did it, so people don't falsely confess. We know from the research and the DNA exonerations that's not true. And the second one is people think that they would know a false confession if they saw one. Like they're good at detecting when these things are false, and unfortunately that's not the case either.
Are you trained as an interrogator?
I took the Reed interrogation training.
What is the Reed interrogation training?
The Reed interrogation training, it's probably the oldest interrogation training that I'm aware of. It's probably been around since I think the 1960s. They've trained tens of thousands of police officers worldwide. It's one of the most popular training techniques for interrogations and interviewing.
In this case, did it surprise you to learn that neither of the lead investigators had any specialized training in interviewing people?
It did a little bit, yes.
What would you say as far as how do we know when a false confession occurs?
There's really no way to know unless there is physical evidence, right? If it matches the evidence, the way in which you can tell, if give you some semblance, if a confession is true, is if the person has guilty knowledge, if they know something about what happened that hasn't been in some way leaked to them during the interrogation or some other manner.
Can a confession that is derived from a coercive interview have both true and untrue parts to it?
Yes.
Okay, so when you talk about a false confession, it doesn't necessarily mean that absolutely everything is untrue.
No, usually it's not. Usually when you see these things, the confessions match what's going on in the case for a variety of reasons. And when you look at the false confessions, generally they all contain information, details about the who, what, when, and why of the case.
Tell me, what is a classification error?
So Richard Leo has a classification system of how false confessions occur, and they involve 3 types of errors that are made during the process: a classification error, contamination error, and a coercion error. So the classification error is when I wrongly think that the person who I'm interrogating committed the crime, and I start asking questions along those lines. The other error, the contamination error, is when I leak in information about what happened so that the person's confession matches the facts of the crime. You know, they may show them, in some cases, they may show them like crime scene photos or autopsy reports so you can see what happened, and then the person knows what they're looking for in the interrogation. And finally is the coercion error, and the coercion error is when they get them to write out the confession and sign it.
Can you tell us about the major risk factors for a false confession?
There are 2 major risk factors for a false confession. One is called our personal risk factors, and the other are situational risk factors. Personal risk factors are things that reside in the person. There are ones that are temporary, and there are ones that are more stable. So stable ones are things like youth, being mentally or intellectually disabled, psychological problems, things like that. Ones that are more temporary are things like being drunk, being in pain, being tired, being fatigued. Those are more temporary personal risk factors. Situational risk factors are the tactics that are used by the police to extract the interrogation from you, or the confession, I should say.
Now, regarding individual risk factors, those things like youth and fatigue that you just listed, why would those pose a greater risk for a false confession?
So we know that they do because I mentioned the Drizzt and Leo paper. They looked at 120 false confessions, and the people who were in there were people who were mentally disabled, who were overrepresented, and people who were young, below the age of 25 were more likely. And the reason they do it is because they don't have a cognitive sophistication to understand the consequences of what they're going to do. So because of that and not understanding, they want to agree with authority and get out of the situation. So it puts them at risk for a confession.
Tell me how, let's switch gears just a little bit, tell me about how interrogators are trained.
They're trained in a number of ways. The one I'm most familiar with is the Reed training technique. And in that way, they're trained. It's a 9-step process. They have their own behavior analysis interview. They're trained to start off with, let me just back up, they make a distinction between an interrogation and an interview. An interview is a non-accusatory fact-finding question and answer thing. So if a person after the interview thinks, the police officer thinks they did it, they move to the interrogation, which is more confrontational and accusatory, and starts with a positive confrontation, you committed the crime, and they do this thing called theme building. And what theme building is you build a theme to give the person and justification and a rationalization to confess. And they're told to present lots of evidence, right? Bring big stacks in and say, look how much evidence, and they're taught to refuse denials. Because in the training, what they say is that if people deny, it's harder to get them to confess.
Tell me why investigators are trained.
You want to train investigators so they can do the best job interrogating and interviewing people, and the best job is extracting as much honest and truthful information without getting any false information.
And what is a guilt presumptive technique?
A guilt presumptive technique is when you assume that the person has committed a crime. The problem with doing this is it directs all the questions in line with that, sort of in a confirmatory way, to try and get the person to agree with your point of view.
And are those tactics effective in getting confessions?
They are.
What happens when those tactics are applied in situations where maybe the person didn't do something?
There's a lot of social influence and persuasion going on, so it sometimes can also lead to people who falsely confess.
What happens when they're applied to a situation where the police have already kind of framed out their narrative?
It can be extremely persuasive and influential to the person they're trying to get the information from, if that's what you're asking me.
So why wouldn't a person just maintain a denial?
It's very difficult in that situation, right? You're in a situation, you don't know what's going on, you're being told that the only way to get out of the situation is that if you confess. You're told over and over and over again that you're lying or you're not telling the truth. It's very hard to get out of there. In some situations, you're told the only way you're getting out of this room is if you tell us that you did it or something like that. It's not as easy as people might think to just say, hey, I'm done. And the problem with the Miranda warnings is that people understand that they have a right to an attorney. They don't understand the second part, that they can end the interview at any time and ask for an attorney, so they don't realize that they have the opportunity to just stop the interview and get relief or help.
I want to talk to you about the psychological impacts of interrogation tactics. Tell us about self-regulation.
Self-regulation is a process where you have to maintain cognitive, physical, and emotional control in order to achieve some goal. So if you want to lose weight, right, you have to maintain your cognitive, you have to maintain your emotions, and you have to stick to whatever physical exercise you're doing. In the case of confessions, right, you have to maintain your composure in order to not confess if you in fact haven't committed the crime.
And does fatigue weaken your ability to do that?
Yes.
How?
When you get tired, it's hard to maintain and continue to be vigilant in these things. I mean, you know from your own experience that when you're exercising, when you get tired, it becomes harder and harder to force yourself to do whatever exercise you're trying to do, to lift the weights or to do more push-ups. It just becomes more difficult as you become worn down. The same thing happens in the interrogation situation.
What happens when a person kind of comes to the conclusion that what they are saying will not be accepted by the interviewer?
Two things can happen. One is if they understand their rights and they exercise them, they can end the interrogation and say, look, I want a lawyer now. And at that point, the interrogation will end. So the other opportunity is they can just give in and confess. It's particularly a problem for people who are innocent, because if they're being shown evidence, people who are innocent will think that that evidence will then exonerate them because they didn't commit the crime if that evidence actually exists.
Are you able to give an opinion about whether a confession is true or false?
I'm not.
Can there be parts of any confession that are true and parts that are false?
Yes.
And is it your job to say which of those are true and which of those are false?
It is not.
Can both the true parts and the false parts be a product of coercive tactics?
Yes.
But sometimes you have a very detailed confession that you're dealing with. Doesn't detail show truth?
Unfortunately not. So that when they've looked at the first DNA exonerations of false confessions, when they look at the actual confessions, most of them have in them, 95%, have in them something about the who, what, when, and where of the crime, as well as oftentimes they have an apology in them as well. And these are documented false confessions because they've been exonerated through DNA.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention specifically to Mr. Isabel now, okay? Did you have an opportunity to review the interrogation in Mr. Isabel's case?
I did.
You mentioned mentioned the read technique earlier. Is that thought to be a coercive technique?
In the psychological literature, it is thought to be one of the coercive techniques, yes.
Did you believe the read technique was being utilized here?
Yes.
Okay. Even though they haven't been specifically trained on it?
Yes.
So, even with the read technique, well, let me back up just a second. Can you tell the jury a little bit about the read technique?
It's what we talked about before. To do the read technique, starts off, it's a 9-step process, and the police in this case didn't do all of it. It starts off, they train you in a behavioral analysis interview, which is supposed to help you determine if these things are true, if they're not true. And then you use the tactics that we talked about, like refusing denials and presenting evidence.
Is it thought to be a coercive technique?
It is.
Even with a reputedly coercive technique, are there certain practices that are frowned upon within the read technique?
So the read techniques published a list of unacceptable practices. And 2 of them, the most ones they talk about the most, are making threats of inevitable consequences, and then promises of leniency to get someone to confess.
Did any of those happen here?
They did.
I'd like to direct your attention to a quote from Sergeant Boyd, okay? He said, because the story, and I'm gonna paraphrase some of the language, okay? Because the story that you're running with right now, and I'm gonna say that with all effing honesty, the story that you're running with right now, you will be effing dodging dicks for the next 50 effing years with that effing story. Do you understand what I'm saying? That shit ain't gonna effing fly, Brandon. I'm just being real with you. It ain't gonna effing fly, bruh. You know that, and I know that. What's problematic, if anything, about that quote?
It's a threat of inevitable consequences, and in the read material, they expressly state that you shouldn't threaten someone with rape in order to get them to confess.
Is there a reasoning behind that?
There is. Cases have been overturned because that tactic was used, and the court decided that doing that made it an involuntary confession.
Are there any examples that you saw regarding promises of leniency?
There were implied promises of leniency.
Sergeant Winbush said, I'll tell you like this right here. I'm almost through with my cup of coffee. When I'm through with my cup of coffee, I'm going to get up and walk out of this room. If you ain't came off of it, I'm leaving. I'm going to leave. You got to face the music on this. This is the only time I'm offering help. This is it. Would you consider that a promise of leniency?
It's an implied promise of leniency. What help is he going to be offering and providing for Brandon other than some relief in his situation?
And then Sergeant Boyd said, the only thing that's going to save you right now is telling the effing truth. That's it. It ain't no effing way around it, Brandon. What happened to Danielle? Tell the effing truth. Was there a promise of leniency in there?
The Savior. This is if he confesses that in some way it's going to save him.
Sergeant Boyd said, listen, Brandon, listen, I want you to understand this, okay? You're not a monster, okay? What's done is done, okay? Right now, you have to. You have to talk to me, okay? You understand what I'm saying? All right. I'm not here to hurt you, all right? I'm going to tell you what you need. What you need to save your effing self, okay? You have to lay everything out, because anything short of that, the evidence is going to paint you like an effing monster. Why is that problematic?
Again, he's going to save him, right? This is going to save him in some way, right? The implication is that if this is going to save you, his situation is going to be better by virtue of him telling the truth as Detective Boyd sees it.
Can you tell me about your process when you review these interrogations?
Sure. So that I use with my people who evaluate stuff with me, my students, we use the IIAI survey or coding scheme. It's the Interrogation Interviewing Analysis Instrument. It's a lot to say. And basically what it is they've broken down all of the tactics that have been used throughout the literature in psychology, and they've combined them into like a checklist of 5 different categories to look for to see if these tactics occurred. The 5 categories, one is rapport building, sort of like small talk. The other one is there's an evidence tactic. there's a social psychological manipulation tactic, and these have individual tactics within them. These are just the categories. There's a consequential tactic, and there is a, what we call minimization tactic, and then we also look for what we call contamination, like who said the information about what happened first. Did it come from the suspect, or did it come from the police? So you can see if the information in the confession is based on what the police said or what the person gave voluntarily.
Did you determine, based on your expertise, whether you believe this was a coercive interrogation?
I did.
What did you determine?
It was a coercive interrogation. Brandon was told, Mr. Isabel was told several times that he wasn't leaving. He was called a liar. He was accused of committing the crime 17 times. It was pretty coercive.
How many coercive tactics did you count when you coded this particular
I
interrogation?
think 165 maybe.
Is that a lot?
That's a lot.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you about what you found, okay? How long was this interrogation?
So the interrogation starts when they detain you. It doesn't start when they put you in the room. It starts when they detain you, because that's when you have to start thinking about, the situation that you're in. The amount of the interrogation that I saw, I don't know exactly when he was detained, but the interrogation videos that I saw were over 10 hours.
Is that a long interrogation?
Yes.
What is the recommended length of time for an interrogation?
The Reed technique recommends not over 2 to 4 hours. And the reason they do that is because, in my opinion, if you look at the false confessions, DNA exonerations, most of them occur when you have extremely long interrogations because people get very tired, and it's very tiring having to continue to fend off the accusations and the accusations.
So even the Reed technique, which you described as a coercive technique, does have parameters that it sets out for length of interrogation?
They do.
And this one was more than 2.5 times that length?
Yes.
And you talked about fatigue. Why is that a major risk factor?
Because as you become worn down and fatigued, it's hard to maintain self-regulation. So it's harder and harder to sort of maintain cognitive and emotional and physical control. And when you stop self-regulating, right, when you no longer can, you act impulsively. In the case of confessing, that means you confess to get out of the situation.
I'd like to talk to you for a minute about youth as a personal risk factor, okay? Did you find youth as a personal risk factor for Mr. Isabel?
I did.
Why?
Mr. Isabel was 25 years old. If you look at the Drizzen and Leo paper, and you look at the age of the people who falsely confessed, 65% were under the age.
Yeah, I'm going to object to him.
If you have an objection, stand and state it.
I'm going to object to him. He's done it once already, indicating other cases and when other people were exonerated and this sort of thing. It's not this case. We're specifically here to talk about this case.
Your Honor, this is part of the information that he's relied upon in developing his testimony and his expertise.
I don't know what these other cases entail. I don't know if these other cases are similar in what we are dealing with Mr. Isabel, and I would much rather hear about cases that are similar to what we're dealing with here, given the nature of these offenses. I don't know if he's saying the cases we've seen in thefts, burglaries. That's not what we're dealing with here. I don't disagree
I
with
believe
this.
he was testifying about data on which he relies in making his expert opinions regarding false confessions.
Well, the expert, I'm sorry, Judge, if I recall that, the expert opinion here would have to do with this particular case, not other cases.
Sustained.
Did you consider youth to be a personal risk factor for Mr. Isabel?
I did.
Okay. And that's because he was 25?
Correct.
Now, I want to talk to you about physical comforts that you were able to view in the video. Did you find any risk factors regarding his physical comfort?
Yes.
What were those?
That he indicated before the interrogation started that he was in some pain because of the tightness of the handcuffs.
Okay. Did you notice anything about whether he appeared to be overly hot or overly cold?
He seemed to be cold.
Okay. Why is that a problem?
Because you can imagine when you're trying to do something, like take a test, if you're in physical discomfort or if you're cold, it's going to impair your ability to do it. Same when you're trying to defend your freedom.
Now, I'd like to kind of focus in on some of the tactics used, okay? Starting with misrepresenting their roles by the police officers, okay? What does it mean by rapport building?
So rapport building is something that every interrogation technique probably says that you should do. It's sort of like a little small talk to start the interrogation. There's nothing wrong with that. It becomes problematic when the police misrepresent their role, when they say they're there to do something other than their legal obligation, like I'm here to help you, or if they show sympathy for the person because that's not their role in an interrogation.
Did that happen here?
It did.
I'm going to read you a quote from the statement, and I want you to let me know if that is an example of a misrepresentation of the role. Sergeant Winbush said, I'll tell you like this right here, I'm almost, and it's like the cup of coffee. I'm going to get up and walk out of this room. If you ain't come off and I'm leaving, I'm going to leave. You got to face the music on this. This is the only time I'm offering help. This is it. Is that an example?
Yes, because he's offering help. And as Officer Boyd testified, the sergeant, I'm sorry, I'm not sure his name, their job is just to collect evidence. It's not to offer help. They're trying to find out information about the case.
And Sergeant Boyd said, I'm not here to hurt you, all right? I'm going to tell you what you need to save your effing self, okay? You have to lay everything out, because anything short of that, the evidence is going to paint you like an effing monster. Was anything wrong with that baby when you left her? Was that misrepresentation of his role?
Yes, he's not there to tell, to advise Mr. Isabel about what's best for him.
And why is that problematic?
Because it builds a false sense of trust and sort of indicates that Mr. Isbell, it would be in his interest to do these things.
I want to read you a quote from the interview and tell me whether or not is an example of showing sympathy, okay? Sergeant Boyd said, right, that's understandable, man. I mean, we get it. We know that you're going through a tough time right now. You know, your newborn kid is gone, and you know, you don't know where your baby mama is at. We get it, okay? So I understand you being nervous. And then the second one, Brandon, look, I've been in your position, so I understand, okay? Are those two examples of Sergeant Boyd utilizing sympathy?
Yes.
And why is that problematic?
Because when you show sympathy with people, it makes it easier to persuade them and for them to believe you because it builds a sense of trust with them.
I want to talk to you about the evidence, okay?
Yep.
What is an evidence tactic?
There are three evidence tactics. They are presenting a lot of evidence so the person thinks that any sort of offer of denial will be rejected. The other one is called the false evidence ploy, which is when you say that you have evidence that doesn't exist, like you say, why is your face on that camera, when in fact it doesn't exist. And the third one is called evidence bait, or the evidence bluff. And that's when you say, we don't have the evidence, but we're going to get it. And when we get it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because it's going to show that you're the person.
Were any of those evidence tactics used here?
I believe they all were.
I want to talk to you specifically about the presenting evidence tactic, okay? Sergeant Winbush said, when you took her out of the car, did you pull some of her hair or some of her extensions out? Yeah, you did. They was on the ground. Is that an example of presenting evidence to him?
Yes, they're telling him they have this evidence.
What evidence were they telling him that they had?
Hair extensions on the ground.
And later on the river, one of the officers said, we've already looked at that, referring to some camera footage, and that's why we're asking you over and over, okay? Was that an example of presenting evidence?
If the camera evidence exists, then yes. If the camera evidence doesn't exist, it's the false evidence ploy.
And why is that a problem?
Because in those situations, in the literature, people are more likely to confess when you do those things.
Is it also a source of contamination to the rest of the interview?
It is, because you're telling them, especially with the hair, like you're telling him what to put in, right? That's the evidence that he should be including in his confession.
Why is that a problem?
Because you want the evidence to come from the person rather than the police, and what happens is the only way to tell if a confession, or one way to tell if it's true, is if he has guilty knowledge. Well, if that guilty knowledge comes from a source other than him, there's no way to know if he actually had it or he just picked it up during the interrogation.
I'd like to talk to you about the evidence fading, okay? When Sergeant Winbush said, so when we get this gun, it hasn't been fired. Is that an example of evidence fading?
Yes, because they're talking about evidence they don't have yet, but they're going to retrieve.
And Sergeant Winbush said, she met you at MAPCO, so when I go up to this MAPCO, I'm going to see you and her out there on the parking lot.
Right. Evidence bluff, blade, because they don't have that evidence yet.
Sergeant Boyd said, because look, Brock, I really wasn't bullshitting you. That area really is monitored.
To the extent that they don't have at that monitoring when they're talking to him, that is the evidence base.
And that last one was actually also an evidence bluff, wasn't it? They didn't actually have any of
Well,
that.
then it's not evidence bluff, then it's the false evidence ploy. If they're talking about evidence that doesn't exist, that's the false evidence ploy.
And what's the problem with using evidence fading?
That in the lab, it gets people to falsely confess when they think the evidence exists, even if it doesn't.
I want to talk to you about challenging contradictions, okay? What is a challenge about? What is that?
When you tell the person that their story doesn't make any sense, it's problematic because the implication is that they need to change their story to make one that fits more with what the interviewer thinks they're asking about.
Did you see examples of challenging contradictions in Mr. Isabel's case?
Several times.
Are these, I'm going to read a couple of quotes, and let me know if these are examples of challenging contradictions. Sergeant Boyd, Brandon, let me tell you something, okay? You had to walk on rocks to get down there, didn't you?
Yes, so they're telling him that his story doesn't make sense.
And then Sergeant Winbush, well, if you're holding her like this, her hat and her head is pressed against your arm. How did it come off?
Right, so they're telling him whatever story he's telling doesn't make sense, so that here's a story that makes more sense and has to be true.
Sergeant Winbush, if you placed the baby where you say you placed the baby, then we would have the baby, Brandon. We would have the baby.
That's challenging his story, his contradictions, yeah.
From the picture you're painting, you had to be a whole lot closer to that water when you tossed that gun in.
Yes, another example.
Why is that a problematic tactic?
Because what you're telling the person is whatever story they're saying is not going to be accepted. Come up with a different story, one that fits the narrative that we think fits the evidence.
Now, I want to move from that into psychological manipulation, okay? What is social and psychological manipulation?
So social and psychological manipulation is when you try and increase the person's guilt. And I don't mean a legal sense, I mean, their guilt that they have, they're carrying with them. Sort of like either shaming them, making them feel bad, making them think that people will think better of them, like their parents or the community, if they stand up and confess to the crimes.
Did you see examples of psychological manipulation in this interrogation?
Yes.
I would like to give you a quote and let me know if that's kind of an illustration of what you're talking about. Sergeant Winbush, are you a monster? Sergeant Boyd, are you an effing monster? Brandon Isabel, am I a monster? Sergeant Boyd, are you a monster? Sergeant Winbush, are you a monster? Is that an example?
Yeah, they're shaming him, saying he's a monster.
And then Sergeant Winbush later on said, do you live with your mom and dad? I've talked to some of the other investigators who have talked to mom and dad. Your parents think very highly of you. Just the situation that's going on, okay, with the women and everything. But they think very highly of you. And I don't think they would think highly of you right now, okay? Because they know their son. And they know that their son knows that he has done something. Don't get one part out behind you, but not the other part.
Yeah, so they're saying to him, they're shaming him and telling him that in some way his family is going to feel better about him if he confesses to these crimes.
One of the officers down at the river, son, let's talk, okay? Right now, you've already did the unspeakable, okay? Right now, it's time to get it all out. Get it all out right here, right now. Right here, okay? Where's she at? Where's she at? The truth.
So that is problematic because what they're saying is that it's in Brandon's self-interest to get at the truth. In some way, he'll be better for telling them where the baby is or what they're looking for.
I'd like to discuss with you now consequence-based tactics, okay? What are consequence-based tactics?
Consequence-based tactics are tactics in which it's communicated to the person that the full weight of the law is going to come down from them if they continue to refuse to accept responsibility for the crime.
Did you find consequence-based tactics utilized in this interrogation?
I did.
Now, while they were at the river, did Sergeant Winbush tell Brandon that they would not leave until he confessed?
He did.
Specifically, I think Sergeant Winbush said, so see all this standing around right here? It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But we can stop this now and just say, hey, I put her in the water.
If he was referring to the interrogation, it means it's a thing referred to as trapped, that you're not leaving until you tell us, in this case, where the baby is.
And he specifically wanted to say, have him say that he put the baby in the water.
Yes.
Did detectives leverage their experience to communicate to Brandon that any attempts to deceive them would fail?
Yes.
Sergeant Boyd said, Brandon, how long you think we've been doing this? You think we look like big dumb brutes, right? I'm going to tell you something, okay? There's a lot of MFers in prison who thought that they was smarter than us because they wanted to play games. And you know what? Every single one of them effed themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
It's problematic and coercive because they're using their experience. They know what's going on. They know everything. So not telling them what they believe to be the truth is going to wind them up in jail.
Is describing or exaggerating future sentencing considerations considered a consequence-based tactic?
It is.
Now, Sergeant Boyd told Mr. Isabel, because the story that you're running with right now, and I'm going to say this with all effing honesty, the story that you're running with right now, you'll be effing dodging dicks for the next 50 effing years with that effing story. Do you understand what I'm saying? That shit ain't gonna effing fly, Brandon. I'm just being real with you. It ain't gonna effing fly, bruh. You know that, and I know that. Is that an example of that describing future consequences?
Yes, he's indicating that he'll be in jail for 50 years.
Okay. And was there anything else problematic about that one?
He's threatening rape.
Was Mr. Isabel ever directly accused of committing the crime?
He was.
How many times, if you recall?
17.
Sergeant Winbush said, opportunity. Sergeant Boyd, what happened? Sergeant Winbush, tell the truth. Sergeant Boyd, what happened to Danielle and what happened to the baby? Where are they? Is that problematic in your view?
Yeah, they're saying you know exactly what happened. You've done this, so just tell us where the baby is.
Sergeant Boyd, you pushed her down there into the water. Is that problematic?
Yes, because they're accusing him of committing a crime.
Sergeant Boyd, you know what happened to this girl because you was there, okay? That we can prove. This is not a game, okay? Is that problematic?
Once again, it's evidence, tactic, and they're saying that he committed a crime.
Sergeant Boyd, but that was your intent, correct? To push that baby into the river. It was because you brought it out there into the rain anyway, so what's the difference? You brought the baby out here to a secluded location in the rain after you shot the baby's mother. Your intent wasn't for that baby to survive.
Problematic because they're saying it's a certainty that he committed the crime.
What is information degradation?
It's when you tell the person they're lying.
Why is that problematic?
Because when you tell someone they're lying, you're telling them that they should change their story into one that they believe is truthful.
Sergeant Boyd said, so with that being said, you really need to think long and hard, and you need to be honest with us. Because right now, you know that. We know that you're not. You understand what I'm saying?
So when you tell someone you need to be honest with us, the implication is that you haven't been honest with us after a long interrogation, so that start telling us a different story that we believe is honest.
Sergeant Boyd, I'm going to tell you something right now, okay? And I want you to hear me loud and effing clear, okay? You are not leaving this effing room without cuffs on because you know you're effing lying.
So there's several things wrong with that, right?
That was me, I'm so sorry.
First of all, it's trapped, right? They're telling him the only way that he's getting out of the room, right, is if he confesses to what they want to hear, and they're telling him that he committed the crime.
Sergeant Boyd, right there, you're a effing liar. You're a effing liar, Brandon. Where did you put her?
So they're telling him that he's a liar, right? They're saying whatever he says so far is not true. They want something else from him.
And what's the risk factor there?
That he's going to tell them the story that comports with what they want to hear, whether it's true or not.
I'd like to talk to you now about minimizations, okay? What are minimizations?
Minimizations are when you say that the crime is not as bad or the punishments aren't going to be bad. So you minimize the severity of the crime and the severity of the punishment.
Can you give an example?
If I say to you, listen, everybody gets drunk, they get into fights, it's not such a big deal, don't worry about it. So I'm saying that whatever you did when you got into the fight when you were drinking, it's okay because it's not your fault, it's drinking's fault, the alcohol's fault.
Did you see that minimization utilized here?
Yes,
Why are minimizations problematic?
because they can lead to false confessions.
Sergeant Winbush told Mr. Isabel, what you have to do, you have to think about where we go from here, how you're going to be viewed, what's going to be done to you. The thing is, your timeline is off. Those places you went that night is off. You haven't told us everywhere you went. Is that an example of the officer minimizing the situation?
It sounds more like an example of the officer challenging the contradiction, telling him his story is not correct, and that he has to tell him the true story.
I'm sorry. Is that an example of him appealing to Mr. Isabel's self-interest?
Yes.
And then, what minimizations did you see here with Mr. Isabel?
Appealing to the self-interest, giving rationalizations why he committed the crime. I think Detective Boyd said, look, we've all been there. We've all had problems with women or something like that, so that in some way it's understandable what's going on.
I'd like to talk to you about contamination. What is contamination?
Contamination is when information about the crime is leaked in by the police officers, either voluntarily or involuntary, and they can be used to make a confession.
Did that happen in this case?
Yes,
Did police provide Mr. Isabel with certain details?
they did.
Did police tell Mr. Isabel that this was a homicide investigation?
They were the first to mention it, yes.
Did the police tell Mr. Isabel first that the baby was left somewhere?
Yes,
Did the police introduce the information about the Adidas slides?
they did.
Did the police introduce the information that the baby was left in the car seat?
Yes,
Did the police introduce the fact that the baby was put or tossed into the river?
yes,
Did the police introduce the evidence of the hat?
they did.
Did the police introduce the fact that Mr. Isabel changed clothes?
Yes,
Did the police introduce the fact that the car seat was taken to another location?
they did.
Did the police introduce the fact that the slides were placed in the trunk?
Yes,
Did the police introduce the evidence regarding the specific placement of Danielle Hoyle's car?
they did.
Why does that matter?
Because you can use that information to create the confession, and now you don't know if it comes from his memory of actually committing a crime or if it came from what he deduced that the police wanted him to say in his confession.
I'm getting close to the end here, okay? So we've gone over a couple of these examples that we've talked about, specific examples. Did you have other examples in each of those categories?
I did.
So those were just kind of highlights.
If you could call them that, yes.
Are the tactics that we've discussed risk factors for a false confession?
They are.
Can a false confession include true information?
It can.
How many tactics were used in this interrogation?
165, thereabouts.
Is Mr. Isabel at a greater risk to falsely confess to some things because of the length of the interrogation, his cognitive ability, or his fatigue?
I would say the length and his fatigue.
And in your expert opinion, was this a highly coercive interrogation?
It was.
And that can increase the risk for a false confession?
It can.
And a false confession can include true information?
It can.
That's all I have.
State of Tennessee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, Doctor.
Sir, can I trouble you for a glass of water before we start?
Oh,
Let's get the deputy report so that we don't spill water all over that thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
If that's okay with you.
I could shoot it.
Everything's fine. I'm not saying that, I just.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking.
We'll get you some water, it'll be in a bottle.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So it seems like a bit of a minefield, right, in your world to do an interrogation, right, an interview?
Not really. There are ways in which you can do it that are non-accusatory and non-confrontational.
But you can't tell him when he's lying.
There are ways in which you're doing it that are not coercive. You can challenge contradictions without accusing the person of committing the crime.
Hold on.
Your Honor, I'd ask that he be allowed to finish his answer.
I was just asking if you can tell him when he's lying.
Generally, you shouldn't do that.
You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't show sympathy.
Right.
You shouldn't challenge contradictions.
You can. It's
How
the manner,
can
the manner in which the way you do it is.
How do you do it?
You just say to the person, thank you. You say to the person, look, here's some things that don't match up. Can you explain that? Opposed to calling them a liar, accusing them of committing the crime and stuff like that.
You can't talk about consequences.
You shouldn't talk about consequences. No.
You shouldn't minimize things.
Correct.
You shouldn't accuse them of the crime.
You should not.
You shouldn't appeal to their self-interest. And you shouldn't give them information, right?
Right.
You can't do any of those things. You indicated that this interview lasted for 10 hours and something, right?
Yep.
But that's not true, though, is it?
No, it is absolutely true.
Do you remember the 7-minute 52 mark of the statement?
Yes.
What happened after that?
I'm sorry, I don't remember. Is that when
You reviewed the interview, right?
yes,
You're here to testify about the interview.
I am.
So you don't know what happened after the 7-hour and 52-minute mark.
I don't remember every minute of the interrogation. So
Well, you just said it lasted over 10 hours.
it did, because the times that I had matched up to over 10 and a half hours.
At the 7-hour and 52-minute mark, the interview did what? It ended. You remember that?
No.
What does he do after 7 hours and 52 minutes?
I don't know. And the interview?
He sits in there by himself.
Yeah, the interview is still going on at that time.
They didn't talk to him after that, in the next 2.5 hours.
The interview doesn't end until he leaves.
So you're saying that things that he said before he's left alone for 2.5 hours and they never talked to him again, that affects the things he said?
He doesn't know that it's over.
But he doesn't.
It doesn't affect his confession before that, but the interrogation is still going on. In fact, it doesn't affect anything he said before that point, but the interrogation is still ongoing.
How is the interrogation still ongoing if they're not talking to him?
Is he still in cuffs? Is he still in the interrogation room? Does he know that the interrogation's over?
I'll ask the question.
I'm answering the questions. To the extent that he doesn't know the interrogation's over, they haven't said, look, we're done. It's still going on for him.
But if he doesn't say anything after that, that can't have any effect on the overall interrogation, can it?
I said it has no effect on the things he said before.
But he doesn't say anything after the 7-hour, 52-minute mark. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay?
So the interrogation can have gone on for over 10 hours, right?
It did go on for over 10 hours.
You're sticking with, we're going with time after the interrogation. You're including that in the interrogation.
Asked and answered.
So same.
Okay. The time that he's sitting in there by himself before they ever start talking to him. Do you remember what he was doing during that time?
Sleeping.
Sleeping. That's helpful, right?
How is that helpful?
Sleep is helpful, right?
Yes, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on sleep.
Do you sleep?
I do.
Do you feel better when you sleep?
It depends. We're getting outside of my area of expertise. I'm not an expert on sleeping.
Well, you said that sitting there causes fatigue and it causes them to maybe confess to things they didn't do.
Yes.
So if you sleep, you have less fatigue, right?
Not necessarily.
No.
Not all sleep is restful. Again, I'm not an expert on
Okay.
sleep.
You said that he was cold. He appeared to be cold.
Right.
Did you ever talk to him?
I did not.
You have no idea if he was cold or not, right?
I believe it was asked during the previous hearing, and it was agreed to that it was.
It was asked during what?
A previous hearing in here.
You've been involved in a previous thing?
I read a transcript of a previous hearing in here.
It was asked and somebody said he was cold?
I believe so.
But that's not you observing it was cold.
I took the person who was testifying under oath at their word.
Well, you just sat up there and testified that you were looking at him and you thought he felt cold.
I did.
Well, that's not true then, is it?
No, I did believe that.
You believed it based on what you heard from a previous hearing.
No, I believed it, and I believed it was said in a previous hearing too.
When you put handcuffs on someone, what do you, when you have someone in on a suspected double homicide, right? What are you supposed to do with them?
I'm not an expert on police procedure. I can't tell you.
What do you think you should handcuff that person?
My expertise is on what happened during the interrogation, not what should or should not happen when someone commits a double homicide.
Well, you commented on the handcuffs, right?
Yes.
So, do you understand why they have to handcuff someone that's accused of double homicide?
I do, but it's not really my expertise of why they handcuff people or what they do to collect evidence. My expertise is what happened during the interrogation, and during the interrogation, before they start questioning him, he indicates that they were tied on.
What did they do?
They loosened him at that point.
Okay, and that's all they can do at that point, right?
That's all they can do at that
They
point.
can loosen them. You said at some point false confessions in the lab. What did you mean by that?
So we conduct experiments in the lab. They do them in a number of ways, and you can get people to falsely confess to things in the lab that they didn't do.
But that's not real life, is it?
No,
It's in a laboratory.
it is. That's what makes it so scary, right? If you can get people to false confess under those situations, so imagine what it's like in a situation when you're fighting for your life.
Well, there's no real consequences when you're in a lab, are there?
Right, and people still falsely confess. That's my point.
But they know they're not accused of anything.
They don't. They feel like during the experiment that they've made an error and that there are going to be consequences to what they do.
So people go into a lab knowing that they're part of an experiment,
Yes.
and then they all of a sudden think that they're actually being accused of something?
Would you like me to go over the scenario that they do in the lab?
I'm good. I'm good with that. What is the best way, honestly, though? All this stuff we're talking about here, right? All these factors, all these risk factors, things you shouldn't do and you should do. You can't look at a statement, can you, on the four corners of the statement, or just view a statement and tell whether or not it's false?
No.
You can't do it, right? What do you need? What do you need to really determine whether or not a statement is false or true?
We talked about it earlier, the guilty knowledge. If the person has guilty knowledge of the crime that was not contaminated in there, it gives you more evidence that what they're saying is true.
What do we need to determine whether or not the interview is false or true?
I can't speak for what you need to determine that there's...
I said, what do we need?
I can't speak to what we need. I can tell you what I do when I look at the interrogations, and the way in which we determine if it's true is we look to see if they have guilty knowledge that has not been leaked in through any other form.
How about facts?
Yes, we look to see if what they're saying matches the facts that they have. That's what I'm saying. Guilty knowledge is the facts.
So if what they're saying matches facts that are in evidence, then the statement is less likely to be false, right?
Yes.
So if the defendant, in this case, indicated that he went to Le Bonheur Surgery Center that day, that he went to the Regional Medical Center that day, and then he came home that day, and all of that is confirmed by the GPS on his phone, that would give us comfort that what he said was true, right?
Depending on what was happening with GPS phone, if he had it, I mean, there's a lot of factors, but yes.
Depending on what? I'm sorry.
There's a lot of factors involved. Does he have his phone? Does somebody else have his phone? I mean, I'm not an evidence expert.
Okay. If, what about a motive? If he said he had a motive, if we knew he had a motive.
That has no influence on whether the interrogation is true or false.
A motive doesn't have anything to do with it, right?
Not in looking at what happened during the interrogation, no.
So if he said that he didn't want to have the baby, right, in the interrogation, and that's confirmed with the text message that we saw earlier that he wanted Daniel to abort the baby, that doesn't help you with the idea that that statement might be true.
No.
What if he said he was on the scene, well, we know he said he was on the scene at Levi and Sedgwick where Danielle was shot, right? He said this a number of times, correct?
Yep.
What if the GPS on his phone put him right there at the area of Levi and Sedgwick from 9:02 to 9:17 p.m.?
What if, I think you're misunderstanding my role. I'm not here to determine whether what he said was true or false. And I said that I'm only here to tell you what happened and what the psychological impacts of the interrogation are. I'm not asserting that anything is true or false. I don't make that determination. You keep asking, does that give you more confidence in this being true or not false? I don't determine that. They'll determine that.
But you just got there answering a bunch of questions about things that might make the statement false, did you not?
And I didn't say the statement was true or false, right?
But you're answering questions about what might make it false. You kept saying, yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. It's a problem when you tell him he's lying, right?
Right.
It's a problem when you tell him about consequences, right?
Right.
All these things are problems.
Right.
What we're talking about now are things that mitigate those problems. You came in here prepared to answer those questions too, didn't you?
I'm answering your questions.
Well, here's the question again. If he said, well, he did say, right, that he was at Levi and Sedgwick. He said he went there, right?
He said he went there, yes.
If we have information from the GPS on his phone that he was in fact at Levi and Sedgwick from 9:02 to 9:17 p.m., that's a good thing, right? That's a non-risk factor, right?
A non-risk factor, what do you mean?
The opposite of a risk factor.
How? I don't understand.
All right. If his GPS of his phone was there, that makes it more likely that he was there too, right?
Yes.
Okay. If he indicated that he took a 9mm gun and he fired it at Danielle multiple times, and we know that she was shot 5 times in the head, does that make it, I'll call it a non-risk factor? That's false.
Not exactly. It depends on how we came to that information and what information we used to get it from.
Well, do you remember who the first person was to say they shot Danielle?
I don't exactly.
It was him.
Okay.
He was the first person that said he shot Danielle. So if he's the first person that said he shot Danielle, and we know that she was shot, that makes that less likely to be false, right?
Yes.
If he said he used a 9mm gun, and there were 9mm shell casings found right out where the shooting occurred, makes it less likely to be false.
If
right?
he's the first person to mention those facts, then it makes it less likely to be false.
If he said he used a 9mm gun and there were 2 9mm casings found in the front seat of her car, that makes it less likely to be false, right?
As long as there was no contamination, yes.
If he said that her car rolled back after he shot her, okay? Rolled back from where he shot her. And we find that the car, in fact, did roll back. That makes it less likely that that's a false statement. Right?
Again, if he's the first person to say those things, then yes.
He was. He was the first person. You don't remember that he's the first person?
No.
He was. Does that give you comfort?
You telling me that he was the first person? No.
No. I'm telling you that he was, in fact, the first person.
Okay.
So if he was the first person that said the car rolled back from where the shooting initially occurred, that would make that less of a false statement, or
To
less
the-
chance of it being a false statement.
To the
right?
extent there was no contamination, yes.
Well, if he's the first person to say it,
I'm agreeing with you.
if the shell casings that were found where the shooting occurred and the shell casings that were found in the front seat of the victim's car also match live ammunition that's found in this defendant's car, does that make it less false or less chance of being false?
Say again, I'm sorry. If live ammunition was found in his car,
Yes,
it
sir.
matched
Yes, sir.
those things, not necessarily.
So you're saying if the exact same ammunition that was found in his car matches the shell casings that are in her car and the shell casings that are at the shooting
I'm not
scene?
assuming in any way how the information, how that stuff got into his car or what happens.
Right.
So I don't know.
If all those things match, though, it makes it what?
It makes it what? I don't
Less
know.
likely that it's false. The statement is false. We're talking about the statement, right? You're here to talk about the statement.
Right.
How much did they pay you to come in here and talk about the statement?
I get 150 an hour.
How many hours have you spent on this?
I don't know.
You're not going to do a bill?
I mean, I am. I just haven't tabulated the whole
You just
thing.
have no idea how many hours you spent so far?
I've spent a lot of hours. I don't know exactly how many. It's been a
But in
lot.
all those hours you spent, it doesn't sound like you reviewed the evidence of the case.
I don't review the evidence of the case. I only review the interrogation. I mean,
How-
it sounds like that because it's in fact true.
Well, when we talk about the DNA exoneration, right? What exonerates the person in a DNA exoneration?
The DNA
The DNA. What is the DNA?
evidence, is that what you want to say?
It's a fact, right?
Okay.
So you have to look at the facts to exonerate someone or to work to see if it agrees with the statement they made, right?
Yes.
It's not somebody in a lab looking at the statement that exonerates them, is it?
No.
It's the facts that exonerate them, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why I'm talking to you about facts right now.
Okay, but okay.
You get it?
Yeah.
All right. He was the first to say he shot her. We've already talked about that, right?
Right.
We talked about the gun that he said he used, right?
Right.
And he said he used a 9mm gun, right?
Right.
And we've already talked about those shell casings. So that makes it less likely to be false if the shell casings match each other and match the ammunition that's in his car, right?
That one we didn't agree on. We agreed on the other two.
Let me ask you this. He said in his statement that he threw the gun in the river, right?
Yes.
Now, I know you didn't review the evidence on this case, but does it make sense to you or make it less false that he threw the gun in the river if, in fact, we know that he Googled, he searched, do shell casings, can you trace shell casings to a gun after it's fired? Only a day before the homicide.
No.
That doesn't indicate to you that he might try to get rid of the gun?
Searching. What was he searching?
He was searching just before the homicide whether or not bullets fired from a gun can be traced back to that gun.
That doesn't have any impact on
Your
this.
Honor, I'm going to object. This doesn't have anything to do with the tactics employed by the police officers, which is where Mr. Newshaw's expertise is.
I mean, we're entitled to cross-examine him with respect to the facts of the case. He's up here saying that all these things are risks.
States on cross,
That's a-
overruled.
Thank you. So it doesn't mean anything to you if you actually start, just the day before the murder, if you actually researched on Google, can shell casings be traced back to a gun?
Does it mean anything, or does it in some way affect his statement?
Yeah, does it make
doesn't
it-
mean anything to me.
It means nothing to you.
No. Does it mean his statement is true or false? No.
It doesn't?
I mean, what?
Motive? Planning?
I mean, again, those aren't the things I look at in the tactics. I don't look at motive. I don't look at planning. I don't look at the evidence in the case. That's not my
Yeah.
role.
Maybe you should start looking at the evidence in the case.
Well, maybe.
Is there a question?
No, I'll move on to it. What about an empty holster in his car? That doesn't mean anything to you?
No.
Now, he said that he put the slides he was wearing when he shot Danielle in his trunk. That they found the slides in his trunk. Does that make his statement less false?
Same answer. If he's the first person to mention it, without any contamination, then yes, we talked about guilty knowledge.
He said that the blood on the slides that were in the trunk of his car would be Danielle's blood, right?
Yes.
And the fact that the blood on the slides that were in the trunk of his car was in fact Danielle's blood, does that make it less likely to be false?
If that is in fact, if he said it first, then yes.
Well, does it really matter if he said it first?
Yes.
You don't think that having a murdered person's blood on the slides in the trunk of your car
It matters.
is a bad thing?
It matters that he has guilty knowledge that it wasn't contaminated.
What about blood on the socks?
What's the question?
If there's blood, Danielle's blood is also on his socks that he's wearing during most of this interview, which we know happened, but I don't know if you're here for that. Does that make the statement, this is my question, does that make the statement less likely to be false, in your opinion?
Again, I'm not looking at the evidence. I'm only looking at what's in the statement. Did he mention that in the statement? If not, it doesn't. Really not what I do.
So you don't care about the evidence?
My job is not to look at I'm not an evidence witness. I'm only looking at the statement and what was done during it.
How about this? He said he left the murder scene, which is where?
The murder scene at that intersection, I don't know the actual name of it, the intersection near the one they were going over earlier.
I mean, you reviewed the statement, right?
I did.
Did you review before you came in here?
Not all of it. I don't remember the actual
But
street
you don't
names.
know where the murder scene is?
I don't remember the street names.
Levi and Sedgwick.
Thank you.
Okay. So he said he left the murder scene at Levi and Sedgwick and took what with him?
The baby?
The baby. And where did he say he went?
Mud River?
No. He said he went home with the baby.
Okay.
Okay? I'm telling you what a statement is. We're talking about a statement, right?
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't remember every section of a 10-hour statement.
Okay. Well, we can agree to disagree on the 10-hour statement part. But if the GPS on his phone tracks him from the murder scene at Levi and Sedgwick all the way to his house at Laughberry, that would make that less chance, a non-risk factor, right?
More likely.
That's information that corroborates what he said in his statement, isn't it?
Correct.
If we have ring camera video from his house at Laughberry that shows him getting out of his car, at the same time his GPS shows him getting there, wearing what?
I don't know. What was he wearing?
Should have looked at the evidence. Wearing Adidas slides,
Adidas slides.
right? Does that make it less likely that this statement is somehow false?
Yes.
Those are the Adidas slides that have Daniel's blood on. Does that make it less likely that his statement is false?
Yes.
He says in his statement that he leaves the house on Laughberry and goes where? To the river. Goes to the river. Okay? There's ring camera video that shows him leaving the house, and then his GPS on his phone showing him going from his address at Laughberry all the way down to the river, make that part of the statement less false.
Yes. It makes it more likely that he went to the river.
He said he went over the A.W. Willis Bridge, right?
I don't know. What bridge? I don't know. I know he went over a bridge. I don't know the name of the bridge.
Okay. He went over the bridge, and he drives up and down Island Drive, right?
If that's the drive, yes.
If we have a license plate reader that shows his car going over the A.W. Willis Bridge, does that make that statement more likely to be true?
If he's the first to mention it without any contamination, yes.
If there's video of him shown driving up and down in his white Chevy Malibu, driving up and down Island Drive, does it make that part of the statement
Yes.
more likely to be true? If his GPS shows him going all the way to the boat dock, does that show that his statement is more likely to be true?
Yes.
He says that he left the baby down by the river. Right. He was the first one to say that, right?
Right.
Does the fact that the baby's hat was down there make that more likely to be true?
Yes.
Okay. He says that after he throws the baby in the river, and I kind of want to stop for a second and ask you about this, because a lot of the questions where you're saying that, they're trying to, you can't leave until, they never said you can't leave until you confess, right?
They said this, no, they said this will end.
Right. But what did they want to happen for it to end?
They wanted him to tell them where the baby was.
They wanted to know where the baby was. Why do you think that is?
Relevance.
Outside my expertise, I'm not speculating on
Just a
what.
second.
It's asking him to speculate that it's not relevant what he thinks they were thinking.
Well, he's been speculating for an hour and a half now, Judge.
I'll sustain the objection and we'll move on.
Now, what did he say he did after he said he threw the baby in the river?
I don't remember.
Because you didn't review the evidence, right?
Because it's a 10-hour interrogation. I can't remember every single word of it.
Well, that's kind of an important part, right? Part where he threw the baby in the river and where he went after that? Didn't it?
I guess to you.
I guess to all of us.
Okay.
Okay? You get what you're doing here, right?
I think you don't get what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I don't. True
An
statement.
object to commentary by counsel.
I've spoken with Mr. Christensen. Ask a question.
Sorry, Judge. He went to Walgreens. He said he went to Walgreens after he left, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sustain your objection, Mr. Massey, I'm sorry.
You don't know what he did at Walgreens, right?
He went in and bought some items.
Yeah. He said he went in and he bought some items for his girlfriend, Artesia.
Right.
And if we have his GPS going from where he threw the baby in the river all the way to Walgreens, that would make that more likely a true statement, right?
Yes.
And he bought items for Artesia, and those were found at Artesia's house.
Correct.
So that makes it more likely for that statement to be true, right?
Right.
Then, after he leaves Walgreens, I'll tell you what he did. After he leaves Walgreens, he goes where? Walmart.
Right.
Right? Do you know what he does at Walmart?
I don't. I guess that's where they find the baby carrier.
Correct. He says he takes the baby carrier that he took the baby out of before he threw it in the river, and he drops it off at Walmart.
Commentary, you can ask questions.
It's not commentary, Judge. That's what he said. That is literally what the defendant said.
I agree with Mr. Christensen, that's not commentary. Commentary is you've been speculating for an hour and a half. That's not what this is. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Judge. He says he took the baby carrier to Walmart and dropped it by a dumpster.
Right.
Now, does the fact that GPS shows him going from Walgreens to Walmart give us, make that less likely to be a false statement?
Yes.
Does the fact that there's video that shows him at Walmart or shows his car at Walmart dropping something off by a dumpster make that less likely to be a false statement?
Yes.
Does the fact that we found the baby's car seat right there at that dumpster and it was identified as her car seat, does that make that statement less likely to be false?
Yes.
So just a few more here. Now, I want to ask you, because we've been talking a little bit about, let me ask you a couple things about, do you remember the first version that he gave about how and why he shot Danielle?
Yes.
What was it?
I believe it was. He said he didn't want to have he wasn't interested in having a baby.
Correct. He said he shot her because he didn't want to have a baby, right? But he changed it a little bit later on, actually a couple hours later. Do you remember what he changed it to?
I don't.
Well, he changed it to, I accidentally shot her. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay. Well, what does that mean to you, an expert in these things?
Can you ask me a more specific question? What does it
Let
mean?
me ask you specifically, what's worse, right? Consequence-wise, is it worse to shoot someone because you didn't want to have the baby, or is it worse to accidentally shoot a person?
This is outside.
Objection to relevance. checks and irrelevance. They're talking about apples and oranges here and have been for the last
There's
hour.
there's a point to it, Judge.
Well, your witness has indicated that this is outside of your
Expertise.
expertise.
It's not, this is foundational. I'm gonna ask him another question. It's actually right in his wheelhouse, I think.
Your Honor, his testimony is about the tactics used by police, not about the truth he said. I can't tell you if it's true or false.
I know they don't
I'm
want to
just
talk
telling
about
you
facts.
the tactics police use.
Both of you, all 3 of you, we're not doing that. I'm gonna sustain your objection, you're gonna bring it in, and you're gonna be specific as to the questions you ask of this witness relating to what his expertise is. I know you have a wide open cross, I'm not trying to take that away from you, but we're not going to get distracted,
Well, okay, yes, sir.
please.
If the statement that he gives is more beneficial to him as the interview goes on,
Your Honor, I believe the objection was sustained. As to that question.
I don't even know the question because he didn't finish
I
it.
didn't actually get to finish it. Because you've indicated that there's coercive tactics, right?
Yes.
And they might make him falsely confess.
Right.
Right? My point is, he went from a really bad thing to a much less bad thing during the course of the interview. Right?
Accidentally opposed to doing it on purpose?
Right.
Yes.
So does that make it less likely that the statement is false?
No.
The fact that he had the presence of mind to change his story during the course of this interview doesn't make it less likely that the statement is false.
Not in my mind.
Let me ask you this. I'm just going to run through a few things with you, okay? Brandon Isabel was the first to mention Danielle and the baby was missing, correct?
Correct.
Brandon Isabel was the first to give a timeline. Had the child on January 31st, was in the gym Saturday night, January 30th, when Danielle went into labor, went to the hospital and stayed there until this morning because he had to take another child to the dentist, right?
Yes.
He was the first to say he dropped his son off at the dentist and met Danielle to give her baby clothes.
Correct.
He was the first to say both left the meetup going toward 3rd Street, and he went home.
Yes.
He was the first to say he went to his girlfriend's house around 9 to 10 p.m.
Yes.
He was the first to say that he was having a DNA test to confirm he's the father of Kennedy.
He was.
He was the first to say he met Danielle at the Mapco on Brooks Road to give her baby clothes.
Yes.
He was the first to say they were only together for a minute, just long enough to give her the clothes he bought from Walmart.
Correct.
He was the first to say it was raining when they met up.
Correct.
He was the first to say that he arrived at Mapco first.
Correct.
He was the first to say they met at the pumps.
Yes.
He was the first to say Danielle was driving a gold Chevy Cruze.
Yes.
He was the first to say that he was in a white Chevy Malibu.
Yes.
He was the first to say he handed her clothes through the window.
Yes.
He was the first to say Danielle told him she was going to McDonald's.
Yes.
He was the first to confirm that he saw the baby asleep in the back seat covered by a pink blanket.
Yes.
He was the first to say Danielle told him she got the baby medicine for low iron.
Yes.
He was the first to say he arrived at his house at 8:30 at night.
Yes.
He said he took a shower.
Correct.
He was the first to say he got to his girlfriend at 10:30 or 11.
I believe so.
He was the first to say he texted Danielle several times after getting a shower with no response.
I believe so.
He was the first to say Danielle's brother texted him to inform him that they could not find Danielle or the baby.
Yes.
He was the first to say the brother wanted his location, and he gave him the home address instead of his girlfriend's address. He and his girlfriend went to his home in girlfriend's car. He was the first to say that.
Right.
He was the first to say he left his car at his girlfriend's house.
Right.
He was the first to say Artesia has a blacksmith in Weston.
I believe so.
He was the first to say he had a Glock 19.
I believe so.
He was the first to say his gun was left in Artesia's room in the dressing room.
Yes.
He was the first to say he last fired his gun about a year ago at a Top Gun ranch.
That's true.
He was the first to say that Artesia stopped for gas between her house and Brandon's.
I don't remember that one. Is that in my report?
Yeah.
Then yes.
He was the first to say he punched a hole in the wall when he got to the house.
Yes.
He was the first to say his mom called police when she found out Danielle was missing and messaged from someone else saying they were on the way to Brandon's house.
Yes.
He was the first to say when first found out Danielle was pregnant, Brandon wanted her to get an abortion because he's still legally married.
Yes.
He was the first to say that Danielle decided not to get an abortion, and she and Brandon didn't really talk until around December.
Right.
He was the first to say that his car was messing up, so he and Danielle pulled over on the side of the road close to 3rd Street. The street had a fork at the end of it.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
He was the first to say they sat in the car for a minute and talked, then he got the child and left.
right,
He was the first to bring up the river.
yes,
He was the first to state he left the child in the river near the harbor.
yes,
He was the first to say he left the baby by a fence or a gate.
yes,
He was the first to say he went over A.W. Willis Street off of Danny Thomas.
yes,
He was the first to say he went to Artesia's after leaving the baby.
correct,
He was the first to say that when he and Danielle pulled over and she parked behind him, he was using a flashlight to look at his wheels because they were screeching. Danielle then pulled in front of him to give more light.
yes,
He was the first to say it started raining, and Brandon Isbell got in the car with Danielle and the baby, talked about random stuff, and he got the baby and left.
yes,
He was the first to say that Danielle was still sitting there when he left.
yes,
He was the first to say the gun is not at Artesia's, and he doesn't know where it is.
right,
He was the first to say that Danielle's mom called her and asked if they'd been to the store. Brandon told Danielle he was about to go to the mall, took the baby because it was the end of his birthday.
yes,
He was the first to say he left the baby in the parking lot because he was trying to take her back to Danielle.
yes,
He was the first to say he shot Danielle.
I believe so.
He was the first to say they were talking in the car, then he pulled the gun.
Right,
He was the first to say he shot her while standing outside the passenger door.
that's right,
He was the first to state that he shot Danielle because he didn't want the baby.
right,
He was the first to say that he threw the gun in the river.
yes, I believe so.
He was the first to say that he was hearing noises behind him. She was looking behind him. He told her not to because it was making him nervous. She said it didn't matter because he had his gun on him. She turned and looked out the driver's side window, and he shot her.
Yes,
He was the first to say he pulled Danielle out of the car after shooting.
right,
He was the first to point out where he left the baby at the river. He was the first to say he slid the car seat and he didn't know if it went into the water or not.
right,
He was the first to say after leaving the baby, he went to Walgreens and got candy, a card, and a rose for Artesia.
right,
He was the first to say the shoes are in his trunk,
right,
the jacket's in his closet.
right,
He was the first to say that he took a seat to the Walmart dumpster.
right,
He was the first to say that he grabbed the baby by her leg. He was the first to say that, right?
right,
He was the first to say he left his car at Artesia's because he was out of gas.
right,
He was the first to say that the slides looked like they had blood on them.
right,
He was the first to say he grabbed Danielle by the shirt with 2 hands to pull her out of the car.
correct,
He was the first to say that Danielle's car rolled backwards after he shot her.
right,
He was the first one to say that the baby's hat fell off while he was carrying her down the river.
yes, I believe so.
So all those things that he said are uncontaminated. Fair?
Correct,
All those things that he said about shooting Danielle, about throwing the baby in the river, that's uncontaminated statement, right?
right,
And does all that stuff should it give us comfort that his statement is in fact not a false statement, but a true statement?
those parts of it, yes,
That's a lot of it, right? No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect?
Yes, please. Do you recall when you reviewed the interrogation, Sergeant Winbush telling Mr. Brandon Isabel, you had that baby by her leg?
yes.
And that was before he said anything about holding the baby by her leg.
I'm not exactly sure when they said which.
And that was when they were talking about the way he carried the baby down.
Yes,
Do you remember that being before Brandon ever said anything about grabbing her by the leg?
do you have my report? Can I look at my report? I can't remember now, the timeline of all this stuff. I'm sorry.
Ma'am?
I'm sorry, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk to you about what your role here is, okay? Are you here to tell the jury any particular part of Mr. Isabel's statement is true or false?
No.
Are you here to testify about the tactics utilized by police?
I'm here to testify about the psychological impacts of the tactics used by police.
And so that has really no actual bearing on the truth or falsity of what's said.
Correct.
So what you are discussing with the jury is the way that the police interviewed him and how that can affect the product of the interview.
That's right.
Would it be appropriate for your determinations for you to review the other discovery in the case?
No.
Why not?
Because it has no bearing on what I'm doing. I mean, I could review it, but I try to be a good steward to the state, and I would just be charging them for stuff that I would not consider, in my opinion.
Okay. And does the other evidence have anything to do with what you look at in your particular field?
No, only to the extent that the evidence is either the false evidence or the evidence-based questions.
And when we talk about the false evidence or false confession, what you're testifying to is really the coerciveness of the interview, right?
Yes.
That's what you are opining on, whether the interview was overly coercive.
Correct.
And you look at the tactics the police utilized to do that.
Right.
And the police utilized overly coercive tactics here.
They did.
So whether certain details are true or false is completely outside of that purview.
Right. You can coerce people into giving a true statement. That's true.
Okay. What you are here to do is to just kind of help the jury understand the psychological processes happening during the interrogation.
Yes.
And to look more closely at parts of the statement that are not corroborated by other evidence.
Correct.
Judge, where do you object to the leading, by the way?
I can rephrase. Oh, heavens.
Sustain.
Can coercive tactics influence details?
Yes.
Can coercive tactics affect the reliability of a statement?
Yes.
Can coercive tactics result in a confession that has both true and false components?
Yes.
Are you here to say whether Mr. Isabel's statement was true or false?
I'm not.
What are you here to tell the jury?
I'm just telling you the tactics that were used during the interrogation and the psychological impacts of them.
Is it your opinion that this was an overly coercive interview?
Yes.
That's all I have. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Your Honor, can we start?
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be right with you. Sir, I'll be right with you. No, because this shouldn't be long.
Right there is the defendant. Right there. There's just no emotion the entire time. He's like a statue.
So I don't know if you were stopping or starting back.
If I could have just 1 second.
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, when you were talking with the state about the fact that in your report it says that Mr. Isabel was the first to grab the baby by her leg. If the video that we watched showed the officers have that exchange with him first that I mentioned with you about carrying the baby down there by her leg, could that portion of, could that inclusion in your report have been an error?
I mean, it's possible.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
But it isn't your report where you said that he was the first to say he grabbed the baby by his leg.
I can't see my report, but I accept your word on it.
And it's, you don't have it up there? But it's also, well, I can hand it up to you if you want.
I trust you.
You just, thank you. But also in the, and I'm looking at the transcript of the last part of the interview where Sergeant Wimbush asked, you grabbed her by her arm. Do you remember that?
At the very last, I don't remember it exactly.
And he corrected him and said her leg.
Okay.
The first bit. But facts matter, don't they? When we're trying to determine whether or not a crime was committed.
Yeah, it's not what I do. It's not my expertise to talk about the facts matter and all that stuff.
They don't, or they do?
Of course they do.
Okay. Nothing further, Judge.
Nothing further.
Thank you, sir. You may sit down. Have a good trip. Please call or tell me what our next steps are. All right, well, we've had a day. Let's get on out of here. You guys done a tremendous amount of work today. I'm super proud of you. Do not discuss anything that we have covered. I will let you know when you can. Otherwise, get some rest. Have a good night. Don't overdo it. Truth excuse. Walk around the block. Find a gym. I will see you in the morning. Maybe bright, maybe early. I don't know. Y'all have a good night. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, Lori. That is very true. So we get the authentic Kool-Aid. All right, Joyce. Good night to you. Thank you for being here. Telling us hello for a little while. All right, Aaron. Good night to you. Thank you for coming as well. All right. So, yeah, so that was the witness today. It was very funny. Chat was hilarious. And this chat was hilarious too. I appreciate y'all as well. And Michael says, I'm going to roll and get a few things done before I crash tonight. Y'all take care. And Moki says, I think I'm out to go hang out with you all. See you all in court tomorrow. Okay, Moki. Good night to you. All right. And yeah, so that would so that part was, or we reacted to that part with, it would call the two trials that we had, and everybody else that wants, y'all could go, that wanted to, because that part is over with, and we'll see you all, those that are going tomorrow. All right. And Stay Alive won't be long. I won't be on for much longer. but we can go and play something. Play something of that nature. All right. So, want to go this way? Yeah. So, I'm glad y'all thought that was entertaining. It was really interesting in chat today. Well, that's very sweet of you, Omoki. Yeah, shout out to y'all do that. That's funny. It's humorous. All right, good night to you, Rita. So it looks like it'll be myself, and if Lori stays, it'll be her, and if not, that's fine too. All right. Get something down this way. Yeah, that would be the opening. All right. Anyway, so I'm probably going to be playing some trial stuff, as we do the ending. It'll be a short clip from one of the trials that we watched. Now, yeah, so specifically today, what I did, I was doing things with the trial chats, communicating the information back and forth from the different groups. I also I saw the cats earlier, and Lori, I hope everything was going well where you are today. I know you said it's raining where you are. I know maybe rain. I don't know if it rains often in your part. I would think it does, but I don't know if it does yet. So it's interesting you had some rain because the rainy season's coming. So I guess that it'll be coming over in this direction at some point. It'll come from west to east. Yeah, on the west coast it's still early. Alright, now we will still continue, Lori, the learning that we usually do, what we do sometimes when I research different topics and learn stuff. Now, we're on the topic of the trials, so I want to play. Now, recently we've been playing other trials, which is good to see. Now, I don't know if I've played, because you've been interested in the depth trial, so those that are watching, listening, I might play another depth clip that I didn't show Lori before, if she's like to see it. It's an opening from the depth trial. I don't think I've shown you it yet. To give you kind of a idea. Oh, Liberty, you can go if you like. The part that I was going to play was over with. So the Liberty, this is like the after part of the show. So the show is over, but I'm going live a little bit longer to do some other parts with Lori. But the show was like over with. It was just the reactions to those 2 videos. But yeah, it won't be much longer. But people could go whenever they like to. It's pretty much complete. I'm going to play the opening of the depth trial set so people that may have. This is something I've not really played much before, and for those that have maybe seen the depth trial or have seen quite a bit of it, just give you all like a warning about it. And it's 36 minutes for those that are interested, but those could leave if they like. Okay, here we go. Yes, we had summer drought and then rain comes. Oh, y'all had a drought. Okay, Lori. Because I know it's usually raining where you are. Okay, here we go. Okay. This is the opening statements. Opening statement.
Thank you. All right, opening statements.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rottenborn.
May I approach?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Rottenborn, and together with Elaine and Adam, I represent Amber Heard. In a few minutes, Elaine will get up here and she'll introduce you to Amber. And she'll address the allegations that you just heard in Mr. Chu and Ms. Vasquez's opening statement. And she'll explain to you why all those inflammatory things are things that are designed to mislead you from the truth. She'll explain to you what the evidence will show. And that's something that we're going to focus on in this trial, not attempts to distract you. We're going to focus on the evidence. Not what we wish the evidence showed, not some crazy conspiracy theories, but what the evidence and the facts actually show. And as you assess the evidence in this trial, I would ask that you keep one question in mind above all else, which is this: why are you here? What are you being asked to decide? You're being asked to decide a very simple question. And that question is, were the words that Amber used in the December 18th, 2018 opinion piece that was published in the Washington Post protected free speech under the First Amendment or not? That is the question, and that's what you're being asked to decide. At the end of the trial, the judge will explain to you what the law is on defamation and what Mr. Depp's burden is to prove in order to establish defamation. And she'll tell you a lot of things about the law. But among them, she will tell you that Mr. Depp will have to prove that the words Ms. Heard used were about him and that they were false. And if he can't do that, and if he can't meet the other elements of the claim, then he loses that claim. And he can't do that. He can't come close to doing that. And for that reason, you're going to hear, in this trial, Mr. Depp's team is going to make it about trying to distract you from that very simple question. Mr. Depp's team is going to try to turn this case into a soap opera. Why? I'm not really sure, because the evidence isn't pretty for Mr. Depp. It's not. You're going to see who the real Johnny Depp is. Behind the red carpets, behind the fame, behind the money, behind the pirate costumes, you're going to see who that man really is. Amber is going to tell you about it. You're going to hear who he really is from other witnesses. And you're going to hear who he really is in his own words, in the vile, graphic, terrible messages that he wrote about Amber and ways he used to describe Amber and what he wanted to do to Amber from the earliest days that they were dating, through their marriage, and after their marriage. You're going to hear about that. But this case isn't about that. This case isn't about a day-to-day chronicle of their marriage. It's not about who is the better spouse. It's not about who you like more. It's not about which party can sling more mud. But you're going to hear a lot of that in this trial. You're going to hear that because that's what Mr. Depp wants to turn this case into. He wants to turn this case into a 6-week-long public spectacle of the most intimate aspects of their relationship and their marriage. And you know what? I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we're going to have to do that. I'm sorry that you're going to have to listen to all of it. And I'm sorry that Amber's going to have to relive that. But that's the case that Johnny Depp chose to bring. And we're not going to stand idly by and let him sling mud at our client and make inflammatory and false statements like you just heard in opening and not let those go unresponded to. But ultimately, what this case is about the First Amendment, about that December 18th, 2018 op-ed piece, and whether Ms. Heard's freedom of speech and the First Amendment give her the right to say the words that she said. That right, that freedom of speech, is what Amber Heard is asking you to uphold and protect in this lawsuit. And that's a very simple question. It's a question you could decide this afternoon. and it does not require you to stand and serve as the umpire of two movie stars' imperfect marriage. It doesn't. And so we're going to focus on those words. We're going to look at those words. And as we look at those words, I'd ask you to keep this in mind. Keep in mind what you just saw on the screen from Mr. Chu when he put up those words. Keep in mind what you didn't see. You didn't see the rest of the opinion piece. And what we'd ask is that as you look at those words, that you look at them in the context of the piece in which they were written. Now, whether you look at them individually or in the context of the piece doesn't really matter because the words are true. But context matters. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Heather to put up the article, put up the opinion piece, and I'm going to read that to you. And we're going to look at those words in the context of what this piece was about. Because Mr. Depp's team wants to make you think that this opinion piece was designed to destroy Johnny Depp. That this was designed to maliciously talk about him and their life together. And it wasn't. So let's take a moment to look at this. And I'm going to read it to you, and I'd ask that you follow along if you can. But either way, let's take a look at what the piece as a whole says. This is the piece that Amber wrote. I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having to be told. I knew that men have the power, physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. I knew this long before I had the words to articulate it, and I bet you learned it young too. Like many women, I had been harassed and sexually assaulted by the time I was of college age, but I kept quiet. I did not expect filing complaints to bring justice, and I didn't see myself as a victim. Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Friends and advisors told me I would never again work as an actress, that I would be blacklisted. A movie I was attached to recast my role. I had just shot a 2-year campaign as the face of a global fashion brand, and the company dropped me. Questions arose as to whether I would be able to keep my role of Mira in the movies Justice League and Aquaman. I had the rare vantage point of seeing, in real time, how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Imagine a powerful man as a ship, like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes, not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend on the enterprise. In recent years, the Me Too movement has taught us about how power like this works, not just in Hollywood, but in all kinds of institutions, workplaces, places of worship, or simply in particular communities. In every walk of life, women are confronting these men who are buoyed by social, economic, and cultural power, and these institutions are beginning to change. We are in a transformative political moment. The president of our country has been accused by more than a dozen women of sexual misconduct, including assault and harassment. Outrage over his statements and behavior has energized a female-led opposition. Me Too started a conversation about just how profoundly sexual violence affects women in every area of our lives. And last month, more women were elected to Congress than ever in our history, with a mandate to take women's issues seriously. Women's rage and determination to end sexual violence are turning into a political force. We have an opening now to bolster and build institutions protective of women. For starters, Congress can reauthorize and strengthen the Violence Against Women Act. First passed in 1994, the act is one of the most effective pieces of legislation enacted to fight domestic violence and sexual assault. It creates support systems for people who report abuse and provides funding for rape crisis centers, legal assistance programs, and other critical services. It improves responses by law enforcement, and it prohibits discrimination against LGBTQ survivors. Funding for the act expired in September and has only been temporarily extended. We should continue to fight sexual assault on college campuses while simultaneously insisting on fair processes for adjudicating complaints. Last month, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos proposed changes to Title IX rules governing the treatment of sexual harassment and assault in schools. While some changes would make the process for handling complaints more fair, others would weaken protections for sexual assault survivors. For example, the new rules would require schools to investigate only the most extreme complaints, and then only when they are made to designated officials. Women on campuses already have trouble coming forward about sexual violence. Why would we allow institutions to scale back supports? I write this as a woman who had to change my phone number weekly because I was getting death threats. For months, I rarely left my apartment. And when I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles and in cars. Tabloid outlets that posted pictures of me spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion, and my life and livelihood depended on myriad judgments far beyond my control. I want to ensure that women who come forward to talk about violence receive more support. We are electing representatives who know how deeply we care about these issues. We can work together to demand changes to laws and rules and social norms, and to right the imbalances that have shaped our lives. I know that was a lot, but that is the central issue in this case. Are those words that Amber wrote, are those protected by the First Amendment? And the answer is very clearly yes. So let's talk about that article for a minute. First of all, the article doesn't mention Depp by name. It never once contains his name in that article. It is not about Amber's relationship with Mr. Depp. There are no details of any abuse in that article. The article is about proposed legislation and strengthening of government laws and policies designed to protect abuse victims and people who report abuse. That's what the article's about. And it was written in the midst of a social movement in which the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, asked Amber to use her platform to speak on these important issues. And that's what she did. To do so, she drew on her experiences as someone who had reported domestic abuse. And there's no question, there is no dispute that she did in fact report domestic abuse in 2016. Depp's side admits that. She talked about her negative personal experiences and her reactions and opinions after being someone in Hollywood who reported abuse and the consequences that flowed from that. She talked about what she experienced in the days and months following reporting that abuse. That's what the article is about. The article isn't about Johnny Depp. The article is about the social change for which she is advocating and that the First Amendment protects. And so I hope you remember, as this case goes on, that you saw from Mr. Chu only the 3 statements in isolation, because they want you to forget that. They don't want you to pay attention to what the article is about. Now, if it had been Amber's intention to use this article to detail the abuse that she suffered and that you'll hear about over the course of this trial, believe me, the article would have looked very, very different. She could fill a book with those details. She probably would have started out by calling out Mr. Depp by name. She probably wouldn't have published it in the Washington Post. She would have described in great detail the man who has described himself, the violent side of himself, as the monster. That's what she would have done. The monster. She would have told you about the monster. But she didn't. That wasn't the point of this article. And she was careful to avoid that, even having her lawyer review the article to make sure that it was okay. And she relied on that lawyer's advice, and you'll hear testimony on that during the trial. But because Johnny Depp brought this case and asked for it, all of that is going to come out. Just know that Amber Heard never wanted to unearth for the public who the real Johnny Depp is. But that's going to come out over the course of this trial. I'd like you to also take into consideration who isn't here today. You don't see the Washington Post sitting here as a defendant in this courtroom. Depp didn't sue the Washington Post. He had no interest in doing that. He only sued Amber. He could have sued the Washington Post. They published the article. But he didn't. And he chose to bring Amber to court here in Virginia, where she has no ties, has never lived, he's never lived, where they never spent any time, because he wanted to make her life hard. He wanted to ruin her life. He wanted to destroy her. That's what he did. And I wish I could say that that's surprising. It's certainly disturbing, but it's not surprising, because the evidence will show that for years, all Mr. Depp has wanted to do is humiliate Amber, to haunt her, to wreck her career. That's what the evidence will show in his words. That's what he wanted. But he made a mistake bringing this case in Virginia, because you're the people who are going to hear this case. A qualified, prepared jury who respects the First Amendment. And with that, even though we've looked at the article as a whole, I'd like to spend a few minutes looking at the individual statements that were made, just as Depp's side showed you, because I think it's important to do that as well. Can we pull up slide 1, please? Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. There's absolutely nothing false about that statement. First of all, the evidence will show that Amber did suffer domestic abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp. And it took many forms. Physical, sure, but also emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. It's all domestic abuse that she suffered at his hands. So that's the truth. But what else is the truth? Is that on May 27th, 2016, 2 years before this opinion piece was published, Amber walked into a courtroom in California with bruises on her face that were given to her by Johnny Depp on that incident in May 21st, 2016, that Elaine's going to tell you more about. That absolutely were given to her. And she took out a domestic violence restraining order that she obtained from the court in California to protect herself. And she was, of course, a public figure. She was a movie star. She didn't want the paparazzi, the press photos. She got those, of course. Who wants to be photographed with a bruised face walking out of court? She didn't want that, and the evidence will show that. But she was a public figure, and 2 years before she wrote this article, she was a public figure representing domestic abuse. That is 100% true. And try as he might to take it away, Amber's freedom of speech gives her the right to say that. Can we pull up slide 2, please? This is the second statement. I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Once again, that statement is 100% true. Amber did accuse Johnny of abuse. And she saw how he was protected at the same time that her career took a downturn and that he did everything that he could to try to wreck her career, as the evidence will see. But she accused him of abuse. That statement is true. You don't need to relive every intimate detail of their marriage. You don't need to decide what happened on any individual day of their marriage to determine that the First Amendment protects that statement because it is true. He wants you to forget that. Don't take the bait. Let's pull up the third statement, please. Now, this statement was in the headline of the online edition of the article. I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. The undisputed evidence in this case will be that Amber did not write these words, did not review these words, did not approve these words. That's how op-eds work. She wrote the article. She didn't write this headline. And for that reason alone, it's not defamatory. But here's the thing. Like the first two statements, tragically, it's true. Amber did suffer sexual violence at the hands of Depp. And Ms. Vasquez tried to minimize that and tried to make you think that it's all made up. But it's not. You will hear in the most graphic and horrifying terms about the violence that she suffered. You'll hear that straight from her. She will get on the stand and she will tell you that. It happened. And by taking out that domestic violence restraining order, by obtaining that from the court, she did speak out against it and all the other abuse that she suffered. And she said, enough is enough. I need to protect myself. She didn't want to do that. She didn't want to be forced to get that restraining order, but she did. She spoke out against the abuse by doing that. And the evidence will show that she did face her culture's wrath, perhaps illustrated no more clearly by the fact that she's here today facing this lawsuit brought by an obsessed ex-husband hell-bent on revenge. That's why she's here. That's why she's facing our culture's wrath. And as you consider whether these statements are true, I'd ask you to keep this in mind as well. The evidence will show that in May of 2016, when she obtained the restraining order, Mr. Depp never denied the allegations. And in fact, he signed a statement that Amber hadn't made any false statements for financial gain. He signed a statement saying she hadn't made any false statements. And you'll see that in evidence in this trial. And it was only 2 years later, as his career was in free fall and her career was taking off, that he pounced, that he chose to bring this lawsuit after saying that she hadn't made any false statements. And one thing that you'll be instructed at the end of the trial, but that Mr. Depp's side will try to distract you from, is that any damages that he suffered and any defamation has to flow from that 2018 opinion piece. This case isn't about the statements made in 2016, even though they're true. This case is about the December 2018 opinion piece. That's what the case is about. And I have to say, it's pretty ironic. It's pretty ironic that a piece that briefly discussed Amber moving on from Johnny Depp, that briefly discussed her life experiences after Johnny Depp, is the very vehicle that he uses to try to keep her from moving on, to try to keep her from living that life. Rather than give her her life back, rather than take personal responsibility for his own actions, it's ironic that he uses that piece to do that. But like I said, it's not surprising because you will see clear and graphic evidence of his intentions, dating back years. Now, in 5 or 6 weeks, Elaine or I will get up here at closing argument and we'll remind you what this case is about. We'll remind you that this case is about one piece of paper. Amber's words in this article that wasn't about Depp, wasn't about her marriage, wasn't about her relationship, that it was about life after that. It's about the freedom of speech. It's not about the soap opera that Depp will turn this case into. It's not about who you like better. It's not even about whether you agree with the words that she wrote. It's about her right to speak them. Now, before I sit down, I'd like to briefly discuss some of the damages that Depp alleges in this case, because he can't win the case if he can't show damages. And the evidence will show that he has not suffered 1 cent of damages from this op-ed. Not one. Now, make no mistake, Johnny Depp's reputation is in tatters. His career is in free fall. But it's because of problems that he created, problems that he is responsible for. And he's here in court asking you to blame Amber for them. But it's not Amber's fault. They're from the choices that he made. You'll hear a lot of evidence in this trial about those choices. You'll hear evidence of crushing drug and alcohol abuse. You'll hear evidence of Depp taking more drugs than you can count. You'll hear evidence that before one of the instances of abuse, a cross-country plane flight in May 2014 from Boston to Los Angeles, when he kicked Amber in the back on a private jet. You'll hear evidence that he had had no food for days, that he had used cocaine, that he had had half a bottle of whiskey, that he had had countless Red Bulls and vodkas, that he had taken pills, and on the plane decided to top all that off with 2 bottles of champagne. You'll hear evidence of that. And he blacked out on the plane, and he abused Amber and didn't remember anything about it when he woke up. You'll hear evidence of drug binges with his good friend Marilyn Manson. You'll hear evidence of that 3-day blackout in Australia that Ms. Vasquez tried to minimize and tell you was false. A 3-day blackout in which he abused and sexually assaulted Amber, all because she had the courage to confront him about his drinking. Imagine that. A concerned spouse confronts her husband about his drinking and gets rewarded with that. That is what the evidence will show. That is what happened to my client. That 3-day blackout that led her to be so in fear for her life that she barricaded herself in her room. That same 3-day blackout that kept him from being able to do what he was in Australia to do, which was to film Pirates of the Caribbean 5. His behavior on that trip, both before the blackout and during it, kept him from being a reliable actor. He showed up late to the set, and after that blackout, he was gone from the set for a long time. Now, he did cut off his finger, but the evidence will show my client did not do it. And just imagine this, what Ms. Vasquez is trying to get you to buy, is that Amber Heard somehow developed a major league level fastball and cut off his finger with a bottle. You'll see the evidence. You'll see that that doesn't make any sense. And you'll hear from Ms. Heard's experts who testify, including orthopedic hand specialists who testified there was no way that that happened. You'll also see pictures of what Mr. Depp did after he cut off his finger, when he dipped it in blood and paint and wrote graffiti all around the house. That's what you're going to see he did. And you're going to ask yourself, how can someone that is blacked out, how can they deny that they abused someone? How can they deny what they were told that they did? He has no credibility when he gets up here now in this court and tells you he didn't do this or do that when he was blacked out. So just remember that. Those were problems that he created. You'll hear evidence that the same addictions that led him to abuse Amber also led to the demise of his career as an actor. Like I said, as you saw with Disney, the evidence will show with Disney, he was unreliable as an actor, and those same self-destructive tendencies led to financial distress. Quite simply, he was running out of money, and that distress fueled his abusive tendencies toward Amber. And it led the public to think less and less of him. And you will see a parade of witnesses who testify in Johnny's case that all have one thing in common. They all rely on him. They're all on his payroll for the most part, or they rely on him for some sort of luxury in their life. And you'll see that of these witnesses. So in a lot of ways, Amber previewed the parade of witnesses when she said in her op-ed, and I'm going to read from it and quote it here. She said, you remember when I said this, "Imagine a powerful man as a ship, like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes, not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend on the enterprise." Remember that as Depp's witnesses take the stand, none of whom know what happened behind closed doors between him and Amber, none of whom can testify to that. But remember that these are people who care about their own financial well-being, just as Amber previewed in that article. And they know what happens to people who stand up to Depp. They know what happens because they've seen it. They've seen it with Amber, and they've seen it with other people in his life who had the courage to ask him to change and who he lashed out against. These are people who helped enable the man who describes himself as the monster. Make no mistake, this man's poor choices have brought him to this courtroom. His own bad behavior, his own refusal to commit to sobriety, his own violence, his poor choices. And the people who have spoken up against it, they're the ones that have suffered the consequences. You'll hear evidence that he fired his longtime agent, that he got rid of his business managers and his law firms that had represented him for years. And no one has suffered from his refusal to take accountability more than Amber Heard. You'll hear evidence that 2 years before the op-ed, 2 years before that, Mr. Depp brought someone else into his life who helped convince him to blame other people. That man, Adam Waldman, who Ms. Vasquez introduced you to, had never met Mr. Depp while he was in a relationship with Ms. Heard, or while he was represented by his agents or his former business managers. But he convinced him that all these bad things that are happening in his life, he helped convince him of this, were other people's fault. And you'll hear evidence of that. Rather than take responsibility for cleaning himself up, Depp chose to blame other people. That's why we're here. And the evidence will show you crystal clearly that the op-ed had nothing to do with damages that he suffered. He's going to try to make it sound like this caused him to lose Pirates of the Caribbean 6, which is a movie that hasn't been made, but that Disney wasn't going to cast him in it because of Amber's article. But there's no evidence of that. The evidence will actually show that months before the op-ed, it was reported that Disney was considering dropping him from Pirate 6. The evidence will show that Disney had a dossier on him that had articles from the press, had other information about Mr. Depp, and they didn't have this article at all in their files. It didn't register with them, just as it didn't register with the public. The public had known since 2016 what Amber had to say about Johnny Depp. This didn't change any of that. The evidence will also show that he said he would not make Pirate 6 even if Disney paid him far more money than he'd ever made on a film. That's what the evidence will show. So any damages that he suffered in his career are not because of this op-ed. And it's time to make Johnny take responsibility, to tell him, Mr. Depp, stop blaming other people for your self-created problems, to take responsibility for your own life. And it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen, to make him do that. It's up to you, because you are uniquely qualified to do that. No one else has the power to do that. Only you, to tell him enough is enough, to stand up for the First Amendment, to stand up for the truth, and Amber's right to speak it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rottenborn. Ms. Bretterhoff? Okay.
All right, so hello there, D Sauce. You came in time to see me go, but you could rewatch it if you'd like. We have ended the stream officially from when I was from the what we're going to be doing for today. But it's good to see you. Good evening. And Anna, thank you for your commentary about it. I agree with everything you said. Very good points. And Lori, also you, I appreciate you in chat and everybody else that was here because we have reached the end of the stream for tonight. And this was a little bit of a later stream, but I started a little later. It was pretty cool. And going to be getting some things got to get done, and I want to thank all of you for, although D Sauce you just come here, I appreciate you coming here. Yeah, good night to you, D Sauce. All right, so and everybody, thank you for coming here, and we'll be resuming tomorrow with our trial talk and chat. And everybody have a good night and peace.